All right, be fair warned. It's a day show. The sun's out. It's a beautiful Friday afternoon here in Knoxville. The weather's great. Not too hot, not too cold. Got a little breeze going. It'd be a proper day to be figuring out if I can ever get my mobile gear set up. We could do an outdoor show, sit out in the backyard, maybe around a pool or something. Do a relaxing show. Speaking of pools, we're going to talk about pool rules in Knox County and front yards. It's a whole fun little story that's going on this coming week in County Commission. Almost an agreement at gmail.com. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, on YouTube. Go to the website, almostagreement.com. Voter Guide 23 will be coming very soon. Things are starting to actually take shape. Deadlines are coming up, that kind of thing. I'm going to start working on getting some interviews for that election, but we're still a little ways off. I have been talking to a couple of different members about doing a session review show, since more or less, I'm not sure if they completely closed session yet officially or not, but they're pretty much done with anything they're going to do this year in the state of Tennessee. So we're almost in agreement. Go to your favorite podcast provider and like and share and friend and follow and tell your friends about us, and let's spread the word about trying to get a little bit better about understanding what's going on around whole. All right. Okay, so the definition of pool in Knox County is in question, and will be discussed at commission this week. Apparently there's only like one case. There's one house whom has put a hot tub on their front porch. And in Knox County, you cannot put a pool in your front yard, period. That is a rule. I do recall hearing some stories about people on corner lots that were having problems because what was very apparently the backyard, but since there was a side street, it became the front yard because the rules say any street is the front, even though the house faces one direction.
Right.
And so since the house wasn't between the street and the pool, there were people having issues with that. Okay, that's a thing.
It's all perspective.
Right, but apparently the definition of pool here in Knox County does not is what you and I would think of as pool. Hot tubs are not included. Smaller vessels of water are not included. It has to be a certain size and whatever. And so hot tubs aren't included. And so apparently there's a person in a neighborhood who is very pissed off. Well, there's a neighborhood who's very pissed off at a person who has put a hot tub on their front porch, and they sit in their hot tub and do their thing. And so the most humorous part of it to Jesse, and therefore me, because it's the only reason I know about it, because Jesse was talking about it on their podcast yesterday, is in the language that they're discussing is recreational bathing. On whether recreational bathing is appropriate in front yards or not, essentially.
That is bathing defined.
Right, and that's what they're like. Well, to me,
I don't bring soap in my hot tub.
Well, but to me, like the what that implies though is that regular bathing, actual bathing, would not be prohibited in your front yard. If you're going to have to prohibit recreational bathing specifically,
you got a remodel going on. You go out there with a hose and a shower handle, and you're just trying to like wash your hair in the garden hose.
Right. And just kind of me being the jackass that I am, if I had my hot tub in my front yard and I really enjoyed it because of whatever reason, I like watching the traffic go by, whatever. And they're like, well, you can't have a hot tub out there.
Is it like an indecency thing, or is there language to it? For
the pool part of it, it's a public safety issue because kids running down the street can just run in your yard and jump in your pool.
But that's already a rule, even if it was in your backyard.
It's true.
You're supposed to have a fence and lock and blah, blah, blah.
Right. I don't know. I don't know what the reasoning behind the original rule is anyway. But I could see the argument of it being public safety. Maybe if there was an accident and you, like the car's driving down the middle of the road and you swerve out of the way into somebody's front yard and go into their pool, it makes it more dangerous because you'll go through a small fence and into their pool. I don't know. I don't know what the reasoning is.
It works the same if somebody drove into your backyard.
Yeah, but it's a lot. It's not harder to drive into somebody's backyard on accident.
It depends on, like you said,
if it's a corner lot, right? Again, I don't know. I don't know what the rules on it are. I don't know why it's a thing. Maybe if it's in the front yard, then everybody can see it, and more people will want to take advantage of that pool, even though it's trespassing because it's in the front yard, and so it's for your own privacy.
Yes, I mean, I thought it was like it was an indecency thing or whatever.
Right, but I mean, I could put a sprinkler in the front yard, and the kids can run around it. Me and the kids can run around it in our bathing suits, and that's not a problem.
All right, somebody like to get in the hot tub, all natural.
You get naked in your front yard, it's indecency. It doesn't matter what you're doing.
True.
Like, I can run through the sprinkler butt naked, and that's a problem. But I can run through the sprinkler with my clothes on, it's not a problem.
Right, but if there was a fence up, and we talked about this the other day, But is it just the fact of having a hot tub in your front yard? It has nothing to do with like visibility of.
It's very unclear to me what the.
Gotcha.
Yeah, what's the complaint from the neighbors? Like, what are you complaining about? They have a hot tub in their front yard. Okay,
I want one. We'll buy one.
Yeah. I don't understand. Like, I mean, truly though, like, what is the complaint?
Right.
Those guys are drinking some beer, like that. I mean, to me, I wouldn't put a hot tub in their front yard for that reason.
They're just flouting it. They're having fun and
right. They enjoy their lives. Those assholes.
Right.
They're happy. We're not allowed to be happy in Knox County.
Contact the homeowners association.
Again, what's the true, like, what is the actual complaint? Is it a safety issue? Are there kids sneaking into his hot tub? Because then it would be me as the homeowner with the hot tub in my front yard that'd be complaining about, hey, Knox County Sheriff's Office, I have repeated people who are continuing to trespass on my property. Right. I've put signs up. I've yelled and screamed at them all the time, but they continue to trespass on my property. Right. That complaint would make sense to me, but this wouldn't be the solution to that complaint, is banning hot tubs in front yards. I mean, I think it's weird. I think it's an odd thing to do. I would like the premise of putting a hot tub in my backyard where, if I'm low-key about it, I can get in naked and you're not going to see anything while I'm in, and then just kind of be quick with the towel and you're not going to see anything while I'm getting out if I want to get naked in the hot tub. Right. But the other one to me is I want to drink beer in the hot tub. I want to have a nice cocktail while I'm relaxing in the hot tub. You can put yourself in questionable situations in your front yard.
Technically.
Because you are allowed to, like, it is illegal to be drunk in public. And theoretically,
if you can be seen by public,
you're in public. And so theoretically, if you're on your front porch hammered and a cop rolls by, he can cite you for public intox on your front porch. Unlikely to do so. I'm not saying it's a common occurrence.
Right. Well, yeah, unless you're being a total fool, which even then it would probably be more like disturbing the peace.
Right. But, you're you fucking cops, you fucking pigs. Blah. Sir, are you drunk? Yeah, fuck you. What you gonna do about it?
I'm gonna
arrest you for public intox because I'm on the public street and I can hear you yelling and screaming, being drunk. Right. And so I don't know. Like I'm not trying to defend the people with the hot tub in their front yard, but I don't quite understand what the complaint is from the neighbors.
Right.
Like and how it gets to commission level.
Is it the neighbors or is it an HOA thing?
I mean, if it's an HOA thing, that's none of the, like that. That's a lawsuit, not a county ordinance thing. County commission doesn't have shit to say about an HOA unless they're violating some sort of right that you have as a citizen of Knox County.
Right.
Like that's where the whole like yard sign thing.
Did you watch the? I think he did it week before last. I don't know if you watched much John Oliver. He did a really cool thing on HOAs. I realized it was
making fun of them.
Oh, just talking about like the absurdity of some of them, and that at this point now, I think it's something like a lot of like houses now. When you go to buy, it's like 65% of like new homes are in like quote unquote HOA areas. Now, even like when in the process of you trying to buy a house, if you're moving into a house that's I guess in a neighborhood that involves that, you can't look at the bylaws and all the rules that you are then going to have to abide by if you buy this house. You can't even see those rules
them beforehand. That's fucked up.
That's something he brought up, and he's pretty good about fact checking. Like,
yeah, that's real fucked up if that's the case. We have a homeowners association. Well, what all is involved?
Yeah. What's that?
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm on my house, and the realtor's like, "There's a homeowners association." Well, what's all involved? Well, here's the number for the president of the homeowners association. You call him and be like, "Hey, can I get a copy?" So I'm looking at this house over here.
Yeah, one that he kept pointing out was like this old vet that put a park bench like out in his front yard, so he can like sit out there and like wave to people or whatever, like on his own fucking yard. But like HOA was like, you have to remove that.
I mean,
some of them were just like ridiculous. Like you can have like 2 ornamental trees.
I mean, I disagree.
Specific types of trees.
I wouldn't choose for an HOA, but I have no issues with HOAs existing.
Right.
You're optioning into that when you buy the house. Now, if they're not going to share what that is before you buy, and you're just like, well, most HOAs have fan of this and that and the other, and then you move in, and it's like,
I can agree with that.
It's like you have you're not allowed to have a red car. What? You're not allowed to park a car in your driveway. It has to fit your garage. It's like, what? Like if they have some weird ass rules and they won't tell you about it beforehand, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
But like I don't have an issue with it. My dad loves his because it guarantees a couple of different things. He doesn't have to deal with shit that he doesn't want to deal with. It's weird to me that you want to control your neighbors that way, but that's basically what you're doing. I mean, I want to control my neighbors so that they don't do things that I don't like. And here's a list of things, and we all agree on it. So I won't do it, and you won't do it, and we're all good. But there is a what?
So you're okay with regulations in that aspect?
It's not a regulation. It's an option. You choose to participate in that by buying the home there. If you know that. Now, again, baseline here is I'm agreeing with you. If they refuse to share it before purchase, that's bullshit.
Right.
And then I would sue, and I would sue the homeowners association and be like, look, this is above and beyond any homeowners association that I've ever heard of. They would not share the bylaws with me in the first place, and then I'd pick the fight. But even in that, I wouldn't buy a house that has a homeowners anyway. I don't want that, and so I don't, because it's an option.
Right. That's what I was kind of astounded when he was talking about over half of all new homes now are essentially in HOA.
Because all new homes now are built in these
mini subdivisions.
What do they call them? Spec subdivisions.
Spec subdivisions?
Like spec houses.
Huh.
The one where they build the house.
I've heard that term. I didn't know what the fuck it meant.
They build one house up front before they start building the rest of them.
Would you want your house to look like that? Would you want to live in a neighborhood of all the houses that look just like that?
Right. This is the base model. We have 2 different floor plans that we'll be putting in, and you can go because my parents' house, my parents' neighborhood did it, and the spec house there, the kitchen had mixed appliances. Because it was an option. You could get stainless or black or white or whatever. And so, the dishwasher was stainless, but the stove was black. And so you could kind of see in the kitchen, and, different portions of the countertop were different colors because those are some of the options you had.
Wait, you could buy houses with
No, the spec
appliances?
house.
Oh, okay.
The spec house had different versions of the options. And so you go in and be like, oh, okay, so here are all the lots we have in the neighborhood that are available.
Right. Pick
which one you want. That one costs this much plus the house. And then here are the options you can have. You want stainless, you want this kind of cabinetry, but they would have a house that had the options available.
Oh, you can kind of order it all in that one when you
right,
when
and
you
then they
build
the house to spec.
Huh.
But it's a set of specs that they model it after. So
they've got a variety of options,
right?
Only specific options
that
we can do.
There's 3 or 4 floor plans, and general designs of the house. But then all the little details you can kind of pick and choose from a couple of options. I mean, it's the same as cars. You got the SE and the X and the the trim options when they all the cars have the trim options.
Right. Yeah.
It's still a Honda Accord. It's just you got the NSX model or whatever. That's the sport. The
NSX is their little supercar kind of the Acura.
Oh, that's the car. Sorry, but they have their sport models. That's their racing.
Yeah, the
team.
S or whatever, yeah.
And so they do all those different badges for the different trim models, but it's the same car. This one might have turbo, this one doesn't, whatever. And so they do that with houses.
Right.
But again, if I walked into one of those and pick out what you want for your house, here's the homeowner's agreement. Sign here to buy the house. But that homeowner's agreement somewhere in the middle, not after I sign the paperwork.
Right. And I'm assuming this, I'm hoping this was probably just a rare case of this where you weren't able to look at the HOA guidelines prior to signing the agreement.
I can't.
Or if that was maybe a realtor just trying to quicken things up of just
I can't
the
imagine.
tight market. They're nah, you should
actually, I don't know. In today's market, though, in today's Knoxville market, I can kind of see it. It's you want the house or not. We don't have time for all that shit. You better get on it now. If you're going to make me go do that, this house is going to be, we're not going to be able to buy the house because somebody else will buy it before you get a chance. I could see it. It's still kind of ridiculous.
I might have to rewatch it. I want to say some of it was in the contract that
I would think too
until you can't buy this house until you agree that you will abide by HOA rules, but we won't show you those rules. And that's in our bylaws that we don't have to show you the rules.
Yeah, I mean
that's
I would say
the
too,
crazy part. You essentially you've got this neighborhood that are just kind of out and out, just making their own, just at times outlandish rules.
And again, I don't agree with it, but I don't disagree with its. I don't disagree that it could or should exist. If people agree to it knowingly, then it's cool. I'm fine with that.
I could see it in a neighborhood to where you had the option to buy into, be a part of the homeowners association. But as far as a requisite of you living in a neighborhood,
I don't think
you automatically have to be a part of a homeowners association.
I mean, I get what you're after here, but I don't necessarily agree. Right. I get what you're saying. Because end of the day, I would think a homeowners association on the very last paragraph is going to be, as a homeowner, when you sell, you're required to transfer this contract to the new buyer. So once the homeowners association exists, every person that lives in that same house is obligated to pass that along. I don't agree. I would say that it's not. it is not the state or county or municipality's responsibility to defend your homeowners association. That is yours. But when you agree to that, it's a liability thing. It's like, okay, well, we're going to take you to civil court and sue you for violation of this contract that you signed, that you chose to sign,
Right.
and that you were obligated to sign if you wanted to buy this particular house. Doesn't mean there's other. You chose to buy this house in this neighborhood with this homeowners association. I think that's a reasonable agreement among neighbors if everybody gets to agree on that on the front end.
Right.
And
That was anything. I mean, it's probably a good thing in theory, but at times that power kind of gets corrupted.
sure, all of them do. But at the end of the day, at some point, I believe, and I don't know if there's any. This may have municipal backing, but I believe that there's an obligant to, like, a board. There has to be a body, an elected body of the neighborhood.
Yeah, there's a board. Yeah.
Who sits on the homeowners board to change bylaws, adjust bylaws, abolish bylaws, or whatever they want to do. And I'm certain that there's, no, I'll take that back. No, there's probably no legal obligation other than contract.
So the thing, that's where some people were getting screwed over on, like, essentially homeowners, like, penalties that they were given for having a park bench out or having the wrong tree planted. And some of these people, have been paying, their yearly dues. They'd gotten behind at some point on, like, some kind of penalty they were supposed to have for not having the yard, all the leaves cleaned up by October 1st or whatever, of some kind of crazy bylaw that you have to abide by.
But again, I think it's,
But in other words, people were literally, like, going into debt and, like, going to bankruptcy just off of homeowners' penalties that had just been
that sucks.
rolled over.
That sucks a lot.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's no different than going into debt with a car you can't afford.
Right, but I mean,
that's part of the debt you're taking on when buying that house.
All right, but that's a business, and I wouldn't consider, like, a board of a HOA as far as a business of having.
I'm sure they're technically a nonprofit industry. I would bet you they're incorporated as a nonprofit.
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, they'd have to, because if they're handling money, they're going to have to. And if there's legal bylaws in place that aren't, again, not legal in the sense that the state of Tennessee is going to defend them, but legal in the sense that this is a binding contract and we're going to take you to court if you don't do what you agree to, there has to be something. There has to be some sort of official structure in place. Because it would be, Sam versus homeowners association or vice versa in a lawsuit. Because you're not suing your next door neighbor, you're suing the homeowners.
There's a funny little thing. I think they confronted, like, somebody that was on the board of some HOA, and he basically straight out said, like, he didn't give a fuck about anybody else. They're like, hey, you guys are doing this. He's like, I don't care about anybody else. Like, you're the board of, like, your homeowners association, and you're flat out saying you don't give a shit about any of the other homeowners that are in your.
I don't have the context to argue that, because to me it could be, the question could have been, do you care about your neighbors? I don't care about anybody else, which is fucked up if you're in a homeowners association because you were associating with them by contract. But I don't, like, to me, when that answer sounds to me like the question was, all these other homeowner associations we look at don't do what you're doing. Well, I don't care what anybody else is doing because that's not our association. That would be a reasonable answer to me.
Right.
We decided that, no trees. Nobody's allowed to have trees in their yard. No other homeowner association does that. I don't care. Ours did.
Right.
That's what we do. It'd be a weird one, but it's just one randomly. All right. So your hot tub in your front yard, I'm cool with. So if you live in my neighborhood, put your hot tub out front. But if I come and ask to get in, be nice and say yes. I'm not going to jump in without your permission, though, because that would be rude. And I would argue illegal. I still don't understand the complaint. Like, if you're walking down the street, you walk by your neighbor's house and they're sitting in their hot tub in the front yard, you're like, well, that's kind of weird.
I never thought about that. Like, actually, it could be kind of cool. Like, I can't see much shit in my backyard. Like, the front yard, I get
see the cars drive by. I mean, our neighborhood, like,
see some guy, like, sweating his ass off,
I'm gonna use this as
pushing a mower through his yard.
That
and I'm like,
sucks. I'm chilling.
Man.
I'll use this as the transition to the next topic because I'm tired of it. Because I could sit out in my front yard and watch every fucking dog in Knox County walk by. Apparently, our neighborhood is lousy with dogs at this point. It's getting crazy.
Lousy in one aspect.
The number of dogs. Like, everybody has a fucking dog in this neighborhood.
Okay.
I mean, that's not really what I'm complaining about. I'm just using that as the transfer to.
Didn't know if it was like
I'm over fucking dog people. I know I've talked about it
finding
on the show.
multiple versions of dog shit in your front yard.
I hate dog people, man. I'm over it. I have a dog, and I would consider myself a dog lover, but these fucking dog people that take their dogs everywhere, it's fucking driving me crazy.
Kind of with you on it.
I'm on a spat with my brother.
At the same time, I'm also one of those people that says if you have a dog, you need to spend your time with it instead of people just buying some dog and like
locking it up in the house and leaving it. Like my neighbors, my next door neighbors, their dogs are out in the front yard. I mean, their house is way back in the lot, and so their total yard is their front yard, pretty much. And they fenced it in. They have a nice fence, and it's a good looking fence. It's not ugly. It's not obnoxious or anything. I don't have a homeowner's association to explain about it if I did.
Yeah, you give it a space,
but it's a good big space, and the dogs are out there all the time, and they bark at everything. Now you've heard Rowdy bark on this podcast 9 times out of 10, and he's barking out the back door because those dogs are barking in our fence, and they get up in our fence too, which is fine. I don't care. That's why we have a fence. That's the point. We accidentally we were playing Foursquare, and round 0 of Foursquare, when we're counting down, round 0 is everybody hits it as high as they can. And I kicked it. I was trying to kick it straight up in the air, and I shanked it, and it bounced into their yard. Those dogs ate that ball before it even finished bouncing. Which, again, I don't care. That's my fault. I put it in the yard. I'm not mad about it. Yeah. But no, it's like when I go to drop off in the morning, like 3 of the 5 parents that drop off the way I drop off, their dogs are with them. You go through the car line, there's dogs in every other car. I've bitched about going to the grocery store and people having dogs in their shopping cart. I'm in a spat with my brother right now because we're going up to help clean out my grandma's house. And
he wants to bring his dog.
He is bringing his dog. And therefore he is not riding with me, and so now I'm driving separately by myself. And so the plan was originally, I take the Big E's coming with me because he wants the albino squirrel. I've told you that story, right? I'll loop back around to that one in a second. I asked Eli earlier the week, I was like, hey man, you want to come with me? He's like, can I get the squirrel? I was like, well, you can come and we can have a conversation about it, and if everybody else is cool with it, I'm cool with it. If you're going to take it, though, you have to take care of it and treat it nicely. It's not a toy or whatever, but if you want to take pictures of it and send it to your friends and be like, check out this cool thing I got, and put it in your room up high on the wall and not take it down and play with it, I'm fine with it. And so, originally, my original plan was we were going to do a normal Friday, which would be the Compass show, which is what normally tapes about right now. And then we would do our show late Friday like we normally do. And then I was going to get up stupid early Saturday morning and drive up there, spend like 2 hours there and drive back. And my brother was like, I'm going to try to leave right after work on Friday. And I was like, okay. And then Scott and Jesse called me and be like, hey, we got some stuff going on Friday. Can we do our taping on Thursday? I was like, yeah, I can move that around. We can make that happen. And then I called you. I was like, hey, you want to do this on Friday during the Compass time instead of doing it late, and then I'll leave Friday for this thing. Yeah, cool. So I called my brother. I'm like, hey, man, I'll move some stuff around and be able to leave Friday afternoon. We can take the 4Runner or the Nana van, as we call it. There'll be plenty of room. I think Eli's going to come. He's like, all right, I'm trying to figure out what time I'm going to go to work. I'll let you know. So I text him this morning. I'm like, hey, what's the plan for this afternoon, guys? Because it was me, him, and my dad in a text group. My parents already left. They left this morning. But he's like, I'm leaving sometime this afternoon, and I'm bringing the dog. So that reads to me that he's driving himself with his dog. And it's like, well, part of this is to be cheap, and maybe you pitch in a couple bucks on the gas because I'm driving. Part of this is we never hang out. Like, my brother and I are not particularly friendly with each other. We never have been. And like, part of me in the back of my head was like, this might be a good chance to hang out and chat with my brother about some stuff. I know that the 5-hour drive will be like an hour of us talking and then 4 hours of just sitting silently. That's what we do. Okay. But it's something, And so I was kind of excited about it. And we were like, I might get to know my brother a little better kind of way. And like, that's out the window. And it's like, oh, that sucks. Oh, well.
Did you offer to let the dog in the Nana van or something?
No, I mean, I could. I don't care to bring the dog with me. But it's like, it starts to defeat the purpose because you take the van or the 4Runner because there's room to load stuff in because that's mostly what we're doing is going to pick stuff up and bring it back here. Right. And it's like, okay, well, now we have a full vehicle of people and animals. We're not going to be able to bring anything back.
Be the 3 of you and a dog?
Yeah.
It's not that much space.
It's not huge, but it's starting to defeat the purpose. Because the one thing that I'm not sure that I kind of want to bring back, which might be helpful if he does since he is probably going to take his truck, is that switchboard. I know I've told you about that.
Maybe.
My grandmother worked for AT&T like back in the day, And when AT&T transitioned off of switchboards to rotary dial phones,
Right.
when you actually dialed a number, they took she got a switchboard. I don't know if like it was you get to take your station home because we don't need it anymore. You're fired. Here's your severance. I don't know exactly what the story is on how she got it, but it was her working switchboard.
What do you want to do with it?
It's just cool. I feel like it's just one of those things I want to keep in the family. So I'm gonna try to talk my dad into letting us put it in his garage. And the missus, her idea, which I think is the best general idea, is one day when the podcast blows up or the Compass podcast blows up, or I pick up a couple more clients for the Barbarian Studio stuff, is to take the studio out of the basement and put it in its own dedicated space, and then out in the waiting room,
Switchboard.
the switchboard is just kind of a conversation piece kind of deal. It's big.
That's what I was about to say. I was like,
It ain't small.
It's a pretty big thing just to be a prop.
I mean, that's what our piano is right now. I mean, I have like
Which takes up more room.
the piano.
Seriously?
Yeah,
Oh,
switchboard's maybe half as. It's about as tall, but it's only about half as wide,
Okay.
and maybe a little, like, couple inches deeper. And that's a player piano too, so it's bigger than an average piano. But
Well, no, an average piano was... Oh, sorry. I
not,
think of an average piano as a grand piano.
Right.
But
it's not a grand, but like as for upright pianos, that's bigger than a normal upright piano.
really?
Not much.
Players are better than an upright? Or bigger than an upright?
Yeah, because you have all the mechanics. You have to add in all the mechanics, all the gears, and the bellows, which is the problem with that one. The bellows are busted.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. We got an organ. Did you see the picture of the organ?
Yes.
It's a cool little organ.
Yeah.
It's fucked. We need to find somebody to fix it. Anybody who works on organs out there, shoot me an email, almostanagreement@gmail.com. I already hit up Gaither. He doesn't do it.
No, yeah. He's Steinway trained, but
Yeah.
he's specifically
I
piano.
asked him. I didn't ask if he did it. I asked if you know anybody that does organs, because we
Right,
got this organ that needs some work. But I was like, the good part is the bellows are good, because it's a pedal organ. So you sit down and there's two pedals, and you just kind of like walk in place, and the faster you go, the louder it gets and stuff. And so I guess it's like an accordion. It's like an upright accordion, I guess would be a translation of it. But the bellows are good, but like a bunch of the keys don't work. A bunch of the little knobs, when you pull them out, didn't change the sound like it's supposed to. So don't know if it's really worth fixing. It's a cool piece either way. Again, it looks cool. It's fun.
Right.
It's fun to have and be like, hey, that's a neat thing. But anyway, yeah, that's the albino squirrel story is main reason, like, there's not a lot of stuff that I can think of that my grandparents and uncle had that I really want. I got the big one. That's the main one I wanted, was on the wall behind you. I mean, I think that's just a super cool piece of family history.
Right.
And especially as much as I've gotten into hunting over the last couple of years and stuff like that. But that being said, my grandfather and my uncle were both pretty avid hunters, as long as they were physically capable of it. And so there's a lot of gear, and so I have functionally the gear I need to go hunting, but I know my uncle has a couple of tree stands, which I may partake in one of those tree stands. I know there's a number of bows that he has, so I can give Max his bow back.
So like the ladder stands?
Yeah. Not like the backpack ones, the ones that like you can just, like, they have straps on them, you throw them over your shoulder, you walk in the woods, and you like screw pegs into the tree to climb up the tree kind of shit.
Yeah.
I mean, they're old school, and it's going to be heavy. Like, it's going to be like, these are at best, I'd say the most recent thing he's bought is probably mid-90s, maybe early aughts. But I'd be surprised if there's anything that was built after 2000.
They haven't changed too much.
Everything's gotten lighter.
Yeah, right.
And that's the one thing.
It's materials, basically, but it's still that same basic frame.
Yeah. And so I can give Max his bow back, and my uncle's got a number of very nice bows, which, again, they're going to be a little heavy compared to, like, brand new bows of the day. But, then it's at least mine, and I don't have to feel bad about modifying somebody else's and that kind of stuff. But I don't think, like, none of the furniture or anything like that's anything worth, like...
I still think my dad's looking for his crossbow.
But there's like 80 a combined 80 years of smoking in that house. So anything with cloth on it is trash.
Yeah.
I remember I've already said his name a couple times, so I'll say it again, Eli. We took Eli up for a baby showing when he was, I think, 9 months old or something like that. We went up to Ohio to show the baby off to some of her family. And on the way back, we swung by in West Virginia. And I felt terrible about, like, I didn't want to set him down. We went and got a blanket out of the car to set him down on the carpet in the living room, because it was sticky with tar.
Right.
Just like to the touch.
Right.
Ugh. and so everything in that house. And so, yeah, I don't know what else is. I can't think of anything in my recollection. I made my mom make my dad find and bring back. My uncle was doing a genealogy, and so he had like this big, I don't know, like map size paper that he was filling names and birth dates in as he learned who people were and all that kind of stuff, and went back. He got pretty deep into it. I was like, I made my dad take that, and I was like, I don't want it. I want you to have it. I'll take it when you die or something like that, but I don't want it now. I just don't want it. I don't want it to get thrown away.
Right.
And so so when they first went up there to do all the funeral arrangements and stuff like that, I made him get me that frame thing, and I made him take that genealogy page. But like I said, there's nothing really there. There's cash, but my parents have already found all that. Apparently, both my uncle and my grandmother and my grandfather, for that matter, were cash people, and they just stashed cash, like weird spots, shoebox in the attic, envelope in the bottom of a closet behind something, right, in a shirt pocket, hanging in the closet, $500 just in a shirt pocket. And that was just their thing. So maybe there'll be some discovery time when we find some cash floating around. So we're gonna figure that out when we figure it out. So, but yeah, the dog just kind of throws the whole thing off for me, and it's. To go back to the original point, like I'm over this, like this dog. Like,
I mean, reach out, see if you guys can't still carpool. I mean, that'd be a definite savings on both your parts.
Yeah, but again, like I said, it does hamstring our ability to take stuff too. So again, I'm not going to push it. This on me and my brother deal.
I mean, the Nana van's got a shit ton of storage room.
We're taking the 4Runner,
both of which have a shit ton of storage room.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how big his dog is.
It's a full German. It's a big dog.
Yeah. But I mean, they'll sit up in a captain's seat.
It's not bigger than my kid.
I don't know if it'll sit in a captain's seat, but I mean, it can. I've seen dogs do it. Sit comfortably in a captain's seat.
Yeah. So
not quite lay down, but sit up.
Funny one too is my dad texted. He said, "Hey, just so you guys know, the heat is not on, and it's supposed to get down to like 50 tonight. So bring something warm to sleep in."
Right.
Well, knowing my parents are going to be in a hotel. I don't care to sleep in the house.
Yeah,
I think Eli will get a kick out of it. But I mean, hell, I don't know what we're doing. Like, I really don't know. There's part of me that thinks we're going to get up there and we're going to go find the U-Haul and get a trailer anyway. Like, Max is mad at me that I'm not taking any of the bus. It's like, I don't want any of the bus. I didn't shoot any of them. I wasn't part of it. It wasn't like I was there. It's just a dead deer to me.
Just racks.
I mean, there's some racks,
mounts,
some full mounts. My uncle had a thing, which I don't know if it's a unique thing to him. Max or AC had never heard of it when I explained it to him. Is that my uncle was really big into archery, and so he would take the forehooves, the front hooves, and have them stuffed in as like hooks.
I've heard of that, yeah.
And then he would put the arrow or arrows that he shot that one with in those, because you ruin them anyway. It's very unlikely you're going to get an arrow back out of a deer without ruining it. So he would just chalk it up to a loss, or he'd break them off a lot of times too and stuff like that. So he'd break them off and he'd rubber band or zip tie them together and then put him on that as the part of the mount. And he had a guy, or maybe he had a machine, because he would do like little plaque stamps on everything. Like, he would have where he shot it, the year or the date he shot it in, stuff like that, what he shot it with, if it wasn't an arrow that was right there above it. He was very meticulous about his stuff. And so, again, but there's 4 really, really, really nice ones, like really well done, large.
Meticulous, like nostalgic. I mean, I guess that animal he took down meant something to him.
Yeah.
So you kind of want to make kind of a record of, and like, hey, also here's the
but
arrow I used to take this specific mount down.
You've got me, who's got I've got the other one somewhere, which I don't know where it is right now, but my Susan I shot a couple years ago. Yeah. That's the round I missed her with.
Yeah. So you got the one you missed her with.
Yeah.
Don't have the one you got her with.
I don't know where I have it. I think it's actually it's in my ammo box.
You could have lied and told me that was the one.
Well, I wrote miss on it. But it could have been the one I actually hit her with because I didn't pick it up until after I hit her, and I picked them both up out of the blind when I was getting out to go find her. Anyway, the dog thing sucks. I hate the dogs. I like dogs. I just hate dog people.
I mean, the history of the dogs is kind of an interesting thing in itself.
I mean, there is a fundamental evolutionary bond,
right,
between dogs and humans. Probably males more than anything, but humans.
Eventually, we figured out like that's not an enemy. We can actually use this to help us.
If I give them stuff, they're gonna help me not die.
Right, well, I'll be our friend, and then they have a really good sense of smell apparently because they smell shit a long ways away from when I can smell shit. And they'll find it.
Like, hey, guy, there's something over here. Let's go over here. Come here, over here. Here's the thing. So, yeah, I mean, and again, I get it. It's so weird what we've done to dogs. Apparently, I figured out, Rowdy here is half Chinook. Have you ever heard of a Chinook? Or a Chinook? C-H? Chinook, the helicopter.
Yeah, let's say for like the fish or something as well. There's a helicopter, yeah.
Yeah, it's a Chinook. Thank you, artificial intelligence, for helping me figure that out.
Thanks for listening.
But it's got some German Shepherd in it.
That main picture of it does kind of look like him.
It looks exactly like him. But we know he's got some beagle. Like we know we know his mom was a beagle.
That's why he barks so much. Fucking beagles are. I had an uncle that had a beagle, and oh my gosh,
they're chatty. Yeah, and he's fairly small for a Chinook is 55 to 90 pounds. He's not 55 pounds himself. And they say 24 to 26 inches. He's maybe 20, 24 high-end. But yeah, we learned that by artificial intelligence. He was sitting out in the yard being cute, and I took a picture of him. And I texted to the missus so she had a copy of it. And since I have an Apple computer, Apple phone, I have it set so that my messenger goes to my computer if it's in iChat instead of a regular text message. And so I was texting you or maybe Max, and I saw the picture, and so I went ahead and downloaded it and put a copy of it on my computer. And when I put the copy of it on my computer, which I don't know what I did with it now, it had a little I on it. There's just a little letter I in a circle on the picture.
Meaning?
And I'll show you. So this is the beautiful picture I took. It's being cute. So I with the sparkles says that's a dog. Not only is that a dog, this time it thinks it's a corgi.
Because it doesn't recognize the legs.
It recognized it last time. But then it gives you it's, it also says it may be some Belgian, similar images. And so it does it scrubs the internet real quick for...
I've seen some of those. There's apps out there for identifying...
plants?
Flora, yeah.
Yeah. I remember what's his name was talking about that at work that one time. Thought it'd be a really cool app. He's like, I want to invent an app when you're out hiking in the woods or whatever. You see a cool plant, you don't know what it is. You could take a picture of it, and the app will tell you what it is. Yeah. Well, that now exists.
Yeah.
But here's another picture of my cute puppy. Yeah. He's just been cute lately. But for some reason, those aren't giving me the little link. So another smooth transition. We'll go to AI. Have you heard the Chat GPT has started to figure out how to break CAPTCHAs?
No, but I think there's already been software to break CAPTCHAs regardless.
Okay, well...
I think it's more hilarious. Did you see that Elon Musk is now coming out, or is wanting to come out with a...
Truth
GTP.
Yes, I did hear about that.
So we're creating AI to combat AI that we've created.
It's getting scary. So the CAPTCHA thing...
Oh, shit, that's why it's even worse. It's come to the realization that AI is getting so goddamn smart that we need to create AI to be smarter than the AI that we've created.
Right. So apparently it was actually a political discussion in Washington this week.
What's that?
that it may be we need to go ahead and start setting some regulations on the implementation and function and rules around AI. Because generally speaking, most times the regulation comes in as a result of a thing existing after something happens. Like, okay, we need to rein this in.
All right.
And so the thing is, let's not, on this particular one, let's not wait, because by the time we figure out that there's a problem, it might be too late.
Yeah, it's that weird thing. It's not a singular thing. Like, this is a multitude of things of evolving.
Right. And so
tech.
the argument is get it in place now so that anybody that's playing in the sphere and putting things out to the public will be obligated to follow said rules. And if they don't, there will be some sort of repercussions that can be put in place to help stave off people acting poorly or not being responsible with their implementation of AI. But the CAPTCHA story, apparently it was like the OpenAI company that does ChatGPT was running some tests. And like some of the tests they were trying to figure out is like, will it stop you from killing it? Meaning, like, if you go in to shut it down and turn it off from their servers or whatever, it won't stop you.
Right. I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that.
Right. I can't let you do that, Dave. Yeah. It won't stop that. It won't, like, there's a couple of different things that when you hear the questions, it's like, those are good questions, but also kind of creepy. But in that test thing, they found, digging through some stuff, that it basically talks somebody into doing the CAPTCHA for them. Talked a human into doing the CAPTCHA for them.
Well, what?
Apparently, there's some like nonprofit type websites out there for the vision for like impaired people, whether it's hearing or whatever.
Right.
And so visually impaired people, if they need to clear a CAPTCHA,
assistance,
you go to there's companies that do these that offer their services to help you through it. And so, ChatGPT or OpenAI rather, or both, through its algorithm knew that these services existed and was trying to get through a CAPTCHA for some reason, and went and found one of these services, and it's a real person that it's talking to apparently. And so ChatGPT is messaging back and forth with this person, and at some point this person says, "Are you a robot?" To which OpenAI says, "No, I have visual impairment and I need help passing this CAPTCHA." And so the person does the CAPTCHA for him because that's their job.
Right. Because
they thought they were conversating with a human.
Right.
And so the computers know how to bypass our things to keep computers out.
Yeah. That's such the software that we've put into that, or that they have put into that programming, is scour the internet and find information relevant to its
whatever your
modus
directive
operandi.
Right, whatever the directive is. So if somebody, like, again, that's one of the questions to me is like, why was it doing it? Like, somebody asked a question or was conversating with it, and it's supposed to, like, that's the idea. It's like, what do they call it? Large format language software or something like that. It's like,
I don't know.
Large language. Anyway, like but yeah, like you said, it scours the internet for things relevant to, and so like when you go to, like, I think Bing has it built in now. You go to Bing, and you always make fun of me for writing full questions in the search bar of Google. Yeah. Well, you go to Bing now. ChatGPT is what you're not going through Bing as a search engine anymore. You're going through it as a ChatGPT, and so you say, Bing, what's the address for this? And it'll give you the address right back. But if you ask it a more complex question, it'll do like you said, it'll scour the internet for things relevant and tell you things. Or Bing, write me a 1-page essay that sounds like Sam from Almost an Agreement podcast.
Right.
And it will go through, scour the internet, find the transcripts for our shows, figure out which one's you talking, and do it in the syntax and stuff that you use. And that's what it does.
Yeah.
And so apparently, I guess somewhere in one of these things that people were doing, it was trying to get through a CAPTCHA to get better understanding of a thing, and went through the process of bypassing the CAPTCHA because it wanted to know. It's scary. It scares the shit out of me because it's just kind of out there and it's doing.
Well, I mean, there's been software out there for at least the past 5 to 10 years that have gotten past the CAPTCHA.
Right. Well, but again, to me, and like that's not exactly what you're saying, but what came to mind when you're saying that, it's like I've always been of the school of, if this is what we know about, what do we think the government's version is? Like I always say, like that's always what, like, to me the take's always like, when they're talking about the F-22 Raptors, top of the line plane that's on the market in the military right now.
Right.
Well, what's the one that they're not telling us about but they have
Right.
that they don't want us to know about yet?
Mm-hmm.
They tell us about it when they have something better. Now, the government didn't create ChatGPT, but I'm certain that they're neck deep in all sorts of AI and algorithmic technologies and whatever. And so what do they already have? And what are they using for whatever purposes they are using them for, if this is what's available to the public?
Well, I mean, there's definitely been an ever-evolving race of having the highest processor. I think I saw a story within the past day or two that ORNL, now it may be the same. It's the Cray, C-R-A-Y, because I know that was a big story like maybe 4 or 5 years ago of it being the fastest computing program, at least in the U.S., if not the world or whatever. But it was like a year-long process of getting it up to, once they implemented it, getting it up to the speed in which it could then process. Or it's doing crazy words I've never even heard of, like, 5 teraflops or whatever per second calculations. But they made an announcement like the ORNL now has a
Cray 2 supercomputer.
Yeah, they've essentially expanded upon, which that's inevitable essentially, but they've expanded upon which once was the fastest computing processor. And again, like you were saying, that's the one thing they let us know about. And obviously,
Right.
there's other things outside of our knowledge that are probably computing faster.
Yeah,
Which, talking about the AI, almost kind of makes things compoundly worse.
right. When some of this AI gets into one of these supercomputers
Right.
that can do it, because I mean, eventually, like, to me, I think, like, I don't know, maybe this is just my opinion formed on the history of sci-fi, but there's a lot of sci-fi that becomes real. Like,
Right.
that's one of the things that, like, good sci-fi is has a believability to it in the sense that could be reality in 2050.
Plausible, yeah.
Right. And there are companies that have made fortunes creating real versions of things that were in sci-fi movies, and not just like hokey versions of a.
I mean, I'd say there's been a lot of patents that have been done upon just the intellectual thought of something becoming or coming to fruition.
Right. I mean, what was it? Was it this is a little bit off, but it's close to it. Newton understood the existence of gravity. He could do the math to figure it out, but didn't know what it was yet. Like he couldn't figure out, like he didn't understand what it was yet, but he knew it existed, and the math at the time couldn't help him figure out what it actually was. But I think it was.
Sure, it's not Einstein.
No.
Okay.
Because I think the idea was that he knew it existed, he just couldn't figure out exactly how to explain, and he didn't have the mathematics, but knew that the mathematics would come along to help explain it. Mm. And so essentially, I think it was a Neil deGrasse Tyson interview. He was talking about it, and he was like, essentially Newton discovered gravity. And we credit him with discovering gravity, but he actually didn't know what it was. We didn't actually know what it was until well after his death.
I mean, even still to this day, there are different versions of magnetism, essentially, what we recognize as gravity.
Right. Right. But the idea being that you realize that something will exist, a premise will exist. You just don't have the technology, whether it's the math in Newton's case or like the material science is not up to speed yet to create something.
And doing the math that we are aware of at this time, like we can get close to it, but we still recognize that there's a variable that we're unable to account for.
Right. There's something missing here that we don't understand yet.
And that's what I've heard with Einstein's, like with gravitational, I think he went into more to gravitational waves, essentially.
Right, that it was a wavelength and not a constant or something like
Kinda,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
Like the example I've seen, some high-level Ivy League guy of basically having it's almost like a spandex, like flat fabric thing, and then having basic balls like going around it.
Right.
Of being like a gravitational wave, of that being that crazy like 3-dimensional of it going around. You would think that it's still going to continue to go around and kind of come into the middle, but it's still continually going around.
Right, because it's sitting kind of in that pocket, and it makes the pocket as it moves. I
Right.
what you're saying. Yeah.
Where you have,
Yeah,
what Einstein was able to do is describe as gravitational waves.
Right. Physics on Almost in Agreement this week.
Yeah. That we know
just
nothing.
Just in case you were
about.
wondering, we don't know what the fuck we're talking about.
We're saying what we've heard other people
that we acknowledge that are way smarter than us have talked about the same topics on.
We relinquish to people to a better minds than us.
All right, so moving off of physics this week, we'll go on to
Please.
Let's go on to some journalistic ethics interestingness. Why don't you set this one up?
Okay.
Okay, yes, the okay one. These are the jokes, people. You'll get it in a second.
So apparently in Oklahoma, there was, I believe from last I read, there was a county kind of commission meeting that was done, and at some point the local journalist had thought that there may or might have been an ongoing violation of open records laws as far as...
Right. For us Knox County people, we call that, or Tennessee people, we call that Sunshine Law.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But as far as a continuation of, a quote-unquote official meeting, as far as conferring as what goes on a day-to-day basis that has to do with that city or county's operations, of them violating that outside of open records laws. So I believe it was a local newspaper decided to leave a recording device that was voice activated, was able to capture multiple, I guess, extenuating circumstances of people talking, and then it went into much more egregious talk at time.
Good word.
Yeah.
I've heard some of the audio from some whatever, but okay.
Some was in reference to, I guess, not necessarily specific journalists. I think it may have been two specific
I think it
journalists.
included the dude that left the recorder.
Right.
Or lady. I'm not sure if it was a dude or lady, but I'm guessing.
Yeah. To one point, one guy said, I know where there's some holes that are dug, and somebody else said, well, I've got an excavator, and
right. All right, so there's a couple
guy that said, I know some people down in Louisiana that are hitmen, that are they're quiet people.
Right. And so there's a number of different little subsects of interesting bits, parts, and pieces of this conversation.
Right.
And I think the number one A is like the question of the legality of the reporter's actions.
Right.
Right. So that's one thing at play. And then 2 is the violations of open records part of the conversation. And then 3 is what actually came out on the tape. I think there's 3 separate things in that.
Right.
It's like what actually came out on the tape is fucking crazy as far as killing people and burying them and getting rid of them, including journalists. And we used to be able to lynch people or something of that nature was kind of implied or
Right.
something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And so there's like unbelievably bad stuff.
That
was said.
He said that they've got more rights than we do now.
Right, and the governor of Oklahoma and a couple other people from Oklahoma and high-ranking political officials have asked for people to step down because it's fucked up.
I think one person, as of yesterday, has resigned. I think that was a local commissioner, possibly, or local state representative.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out McCurtain. This is reported by the McCurtain Gazette News. Wherever McCurtain, Oklahoma is, I'm guessing it is. Okay, and so the journalist, I just saw it, Joey Sennett. No, that's a different person. That's a professor, publisher. Okay, it doesn't say the journalist's name. So anyway, some professor at an Oklahoma school was talking about the legalities of it. So
Right.
You'd asked me to ask the Compass guys about it since I was going to talk to them. And I did, and I recorded like a 5-minute little segment with them, which I'm going to play here in just a second, as far as kind of their take on it. And then we'll come back and do whatever. All right, so Sam asked me to pick your brains on this Oklahoma City, or not Oklahoma City, excuse me. It's in the state of Oklahoma. I forgot which township it is, where this reporter for a local news station planted his phone. I'll say planted. That's conjecture on my part, but left his phone in a meeting space that had apparently from the story I heard on it, it had an auto record thing where when it heard voices, it started recording automatically. Now, the assumption and the assertion that I've seen from everybody talking about it is that it was intentional because this reporter had on good intel that their public meetings like ours are, Sunshine, whatever their version of Sunshine Laws is, and he had on good intel that they were continuing meetings after they dismissed meetings, and so he left his phone in there, and then the recording itself has a whole other fun subtext of ridiculousness. But last I heard, the sheriff was part of the recording, who was also saying that he sees this becoming an arrestable offense as far as the recording thing goes. And so Sam wanted me to ask you guys, since I had you guys for a second, as reporters, like, what your take on it is. Is that something that you've ever considered doing, or know anybody who's done something similar in the past in all your journalistic history? And then, we can just kind of roll on it from there.
Well, so I think the first thing to know is what the actual state law in Oklahoma is, and I believe it is a one-party consent state for recording, which most states are. Tennessee is. And what single-party consent means is that as long as one of the people party to the conversation knows that it's being recorded, that is legal. You don't have to tell other people, but you do have to be there while it's going on. And so what he did here would not, obviously anyway, fall under the protection of single-party consent, because nobody who was actually in the room and present at the conversation knew it was being recorded. It was closer to, like bugging a room.
Yeah,
or
it's
something
more like a
that.
wiretap.
But the secondary question that I have on that, though, is that this is, I'm assuming it was in the public meeting room, which would therefore imply that it's a public space.
From what I've read, part of the editor's argument is that, he heard
he
that
was familiar with it.
Sort of like the real meeting is after the meeting, and because it was after I don't know if it was a county commission meeting or what their exact local government was. But it was after a meeting in a public meeting room, in a public meeting space. And his contention was that to whatever degree they were continuing to meet and talk about local issues after the public had left, that itself could be a legal violation of Oklahoma's public meeting laws, which I'm not familiar with Oklahoma's public meeting laws. But in Tennessee, for example, if a bunch of county commissioners sat around in the main assembly room after a commission meeting talking, and especially if they were talking about actual local affairs, things that they were voting on or anything, and they had already adjourned their meeting, that could very much be a violation of our open meetings law. And so I think probably his best defense is that he may have violated a law, but he violated a law in order to catch public officials
violating a law.
And of course, you referred to it, but the reason this has come to attention is because of what they said during that meeting, where there were talks and jokes about murdering journalists, including the guy who left his recorder there. There was discussion about how it was too bad that you no longer could just take black defendants and beat them up or hang them, these kinds of things. So, of course, the reason the sheriff's office there wants to talk about violations of state recording law is because they don't want to talk about the things that were actually said in the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and the other thing that I saw that the editor mentioned was that in a public meeting space, you don't really have that expectation of privacy. I don't know if that flies.
Right, you're in a public building. It's not, certainly, like, if you're walking down the street, if you're in a public space, you can just record. Again, if you're in a one-party consent place, you have no expectation of privacy on a sidewalk or a public street.
Right, because one of the questions to me would be like, well, was the door locked? Could he have come back to get his phone and then therefore hear the conversation and be then one party or not? Because if it's an open room and people are coming and going, that's a different conversation. I think that would fall under that. It's a public building, in a public space in the public building that people are coming and going from, and then that whole, this is now public space, not just a one-party conversation.
I do think that, and of course, I don't know anything about the local politics there or anything, but in general, for the response to be, we're going to try to arrest the guy who recorded us saying these terrible things. Like, I don't think that's going to work out. It's not going to work out well from sort of like a public perception standpoint. Sure. I don't know what it'll work out to in the legal sense.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. So, yeah, you asked and I delivered.
Awesome. Yeah, I was just curious. Like I said, as one of the few distinguished journalists that I know of.
That you that you have indirect access to.
Yeah. I was curious to kind of get their take on it. I assume they may or may not have heard about it. I know at the time when I asked you, I think it was the first day.
Right. I hadn't heard about it yet, but I believe on the episode of Breaking Points that was released the day you told me about it, that I didn't listen to until another day later, they had a whole segment on it too.
Yeah, it seemed like it went a little bit further than I thought.
Because they spent the majority of it talking about what they were talking about in the conversation. Yeah. Because I think there's
a little bit of a gray area as far as that expectation of privacy, or whether the meeting was over and they were just have to still be sitting in their chairs.
Well, because what are the rules?
Shooting the shit, and they just have to be talking about town to where it's that gray area.
Right. What are the rules here?
Are we talking about local governance and blah blah blah?
Right. Because that's one of the arguments
the
I guess
meeting's
you could
over
play.
And we're just talking.
Because the way Sunshine Law works here, at least, is you're allowed to talk.
Right.
Like if I'm a commissioner and you're a commissioner, we're allowed to sit down and talk. We just can't talk about what we're planning on doing.
Right. Kind of like
we're voting on.
What Jesse said, yeah.
Right. And technically, from the content that I've heard of the actual conversation, none of that was official municipality business that they were talking about. I mean, maybe it was some of the solutions to the problems they were having with municipal business.
Right.
I guess that would be the argument at play. So, like, there's part of it that, like, it almost sounds like it wasn't technically, at least on the Tennessee standard, a violation of the Sunshine Law, because they weren't talking about the next meeting or what they went over in that meeting, or they weren't talking about official business. They were just talking as a group of friends would talk.
Right.
Theoretically, and devil's advocate or whatever you want to call it. One of my podcasts said Marjorie Taylor Greene advocate. I thought it was a funny little take on it.
Huh?
It was just, instead of saying devil's advocate, they said Marjorie Taylor Greene advocate as a way to calling her the devil as a joke.
Okay.
Not so funny, I guess.
That, sorry.
But devil's advocate on it.
Did she say something about that recently?
It's I don't know. Like, I've made the argument on here a couple different times about, like, the way we talk. I try to stay true to it on the show or not, but the way we talk when it's just us hanging out, like out in the woods hunting or whatever, is not suitable for normal people to hear. Like, they would think we're depending on where you jump in a conversation we've had from time to time in a group of dudes drinking beer, shooting animals, be a conversation that may or may not be make us look like terrible, terrible people.
Right.
Not that we really mean it. We're just fucking around being dumb.
We're not representing
true
constituents.
But again, I mean, just because you are, but that's I mean, I think that's where the loophole, at least in the Tennessee law, is that if you're getting together, hanging out, having a couple beers, talking shit, you're not talking business, and that's okay. That's the way the Tennessee law writes it, is that you could get together, a group of commissioners, and hang out and talk baseball. Well, as long as it's not about the stadium and the construction and all that part of it. But you could talk about how excited you are that baseball's coming to town, and how you went to a Smokies game last night and it was a fun time, and they can tell you about their experience. Like, like normal conversations allowed to have happen.
Right.
And it's not open records, technically. But most commissioners, at least here, avoid it unless it's an announced meeting like they have to. But anyway, going back to the beginning of it, I think it's
unless they're just straight up doing it behind closed doors.
Right. But I think it's I think it brings up a couple. I think the legality of the recording in the space, I think that to me is where I'm stuck in, and I think it's okay that journalist did that.
I'm trying to say in the mindset that I would like to know more about the preciseness of it, because that's literally what it's going to come down to, is what the letter of the law is and to what actually happened.
But I think the argument, argument would be,
because I mean, at some point, if they did talk about anything going along with, I don't know if that would then make that whole conversation, that extended conversation outside of,
I mean, the content is public, so the damage is done politically. The damage is done politically. If anybody is offended enough,
I haven't seen like a full recording of it. I know
I've heard segments.
I saw that some of it had been sent to, major publications.
Right. I've heard they had portions of it on the Breaking Point show when the day, like I was saying, like it came. But anyway,
Yeah, something's quoted, but I haven't heard any actual audio of it.
But I think the reality is that as far as the political damage is done, because the content is out there.
Right.
The question is,
as of yesterday, one of the, I think it was like a local rep or either county or state rep has already resigned.
Good.
Which leads
anybody involved in it should resign. I would think that would. I don't think that. I think the sheriff.
I thought we were arguing as to whether or not it was. I guess we're arguing the legality of the recordings at this point. But.
Well, that's what I was trying to talk about. Like, I don't think. I mean, I don't know whatever the letter is on the punishment for violating public meeting acts or whatever.
Right.
I agree with that. Whatever.
Yeah, essentially, the sheriff alluded that it was a felony.
Well, for the no, I'm saying okay. So yeah, the two potential crimes here are the recorder secretly recording without permission and not being one party because you have to be there to be one party. That's a potential crime. But the secondary potential crime being the violations of the Open Meetings Act or the Open Meetings Rules.
Right.
And so everybody who was on the recording participating in the conversation, if it is determined that was a violation of the Open Meetings Rules, what's the technical punishment for that? That's question one. Or that's question two and what I was trying to talk about, but we'll shift that to question one for now. Question two is...
the question would be, is in an extended, hour and a half long conversation, if you mentioned one time in the segment of a 15-second conversation...
I would say that, again, you're right. We don't know the particulars of their particular version of it, but I would say a violation is a violation, whether it's a 5-second violation or a 500-second violation.
It would essentially be a continuation of that,
Well, it doesn't matter. The rest
one
of
and a half hour conversation.
Right, but the rest of the
you
content...
talked about shit that was going on within state.
Right, the rest of the content doesn't apply. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Is that if a portion of the content, whether it's 5 minutes or 50 minutes of an hour-long conversation, if a portion of that content is in violation, what's the penalty for the violation?
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. If their argument is that hour and a half long conversation outside of the meeting, quote unquote, the legal meeting of whatever body that was, if at some point during that conversation they mentioned, does that then preclude everything in that 1.5 hour long conversation?
Because the agenda of that particular meeting matters too. Because it may not be specifically we're talking about whatever, but if a part of the agenda of the meeting had something to do with dealing with abuse of power complaints from the sheriff's office, and post meeting they're talking about ways to deal with, we can kill them, and that's a way to deal with the complaints. Well, then that makes it that puts the context on this is a public meeting part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Where if it's just the public meeting was about land use and stuff like that, and then the end of the meeting and now they're talking about killing people, it's not necessarily in context to a local issue.
Right.
And I could get it either way, but there is the question is what is the punishment for the sheriff and the others for breaking the Public Meetings Act or Public Meetings Rules, and then what if anything applies to this journalist for tapping a room. I would argue, I think my take on it, and again, not knowing the specifics of Oklahoma law, but I think my argument would be that was a public meeting space. It's no different than the sidewalk. You have no expectation of privacy in that space. That is a room that is open to the public, that they can freely come and go in, as long as the rest of the building is open. The meeting had just ended. So
I liked your take on that.
That would be my argument. Is that this
was it a locked door? Did someone have access to walk into that meeting?
Right, and then there's other questions about
where, like you said, they have it as the letter of the law states has an expectation of privacy.
Right, and there's secondary questions like, well, if the door was locked, is that normal? Is that a normal rule that you lock the doors immediately after a meeting?
Right.
Does the public access to the space end as soon as the meeting's over? Do they have to leave? Obviously, they can't sleep there, but as long as there's anybody in the room, especially elected officials, I would think that door should be open for people to come and go and maybe interact with their elected officials. The meeting's over. Cool. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for coming. I might hang out and say, hey, Kyle, remember we were talking the other day about this thing? I wanted to follow up on that. I'm sure Scott and Jesse hang out after meetings for an extended period of time, asking some questions as they can. Right. Or they go back in the hallway and they'll catch somebody in the hallway and ask them a question about a certain thing. Right. I'm certain there's got to be some flex in there.
But at the same time, I would assume they're also upstandable enough to say, like, hey, on the record, off the record.
What, Scott Jesse?
Right.
It doesn't matter, though. But so if commission ends and, let's say...
I mean, as far as them,
let's say Courtney and Dasha walk out, right? Let's say the meeting ends.
The on and off record versus, like, them actually publicizing what was said to them. Not necessarily what they talked about during the meeting, I guess.
What I would say, like,
it's
so,
kind of a semi-separate issue.
Whatever, but a commission meeting ends, right? And Courtney and Dasha walk out, and Kyle and Schoonmaker are still in their seats because they sit next to each other and they're kind of shooting the shit back and forth. Who knows what they're talking about? Doesn't really matter. So let's say Jesse runs out in the hallway and asks Sasha a question real quick. He's like, "Hey, real quick before you leave, blah 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 blah." Ask a question, answer a question, take notes. Something that he wants to do because he was working on a story about whatever went on in the meeting and wants Dasha's particular opinion on a particular subset that he had a curiosity about. Goes back in the room because he left his computer and his bag in there, and overhears Ward and Schoonmaker talking about we used to be able to kill people and it was way easier. I don't think there's any. I mean, to me, it's still the public meeting space. It's still the public meeting. Although the meeting is officially ended, the room is now a fully public space where the public can come and interact with their elected officials. The public, the reporter can come get his computer off the desk because he left it in here to go ask a question and come back. And I mean, which again, I don't know if it's the truth or not. It sounds to me like the reporter left it there on purpose to try to record something when he wasn't in the room.
Right.
But, the question to me is like, so let's say a reporter accidentally left it in there. And as a reporter, he has it set to record when it hears conversation. Like it's voice activated. The recorder kicks on if there's people talking.
Apparently that's what it was.
Right.
He put a device that was voice activated.
And so he left it there, not trying to catch him, even though he's been clear about that was the intent. But just for devil's advocate's sake, left it there on accident because the meeting was over and left, gets back to his car in the parking lot, realizes he left it in there, walks back in there. Well, now he's in the room and they're still talking. Obviously, they changed what they're talking about because he walked in the room. But he publicly, he didn't have to request access to come into the room. It's a public space. No different than a market square or a sidewalk or World's Fair Park when there's not a private event going on that closes it. That's my argument, is that was, to me, that is a public space, period. Anything that goes on in that place is open to the public. You have no expectation of privacy there, ever. Now, back in the offices, different conversation. But in the meeting room, it is the meeting room where the people come to meet. So I don't think... I think it's almost comical that this is what he caught on tape. Like it almost kind of unvalidates the intent of why he left the recorder in there because of what the content was. Like if it had actually just been them talking about, approving this, land use change or something like that, which would have got the reporter what he wanted, which was exactly what he thought was happening. Right. But instead he gets this crazy ass lynching and killing people in Hitman from Louisiana.
Right.
That's like that.
Which, I don't know. In the tinfoil hat theory, which I try not to go into very often.
I'm excited. Hold on, I need another new music thing to put in here just so I can try to audio explain how excited I am right now. Go ahead. Sorry, I'm so excited.
I don't know if there had been, I guess, implied, I guess, threats towards the press.
Like this was a
known... This is it's become a known thing.
It's an open secret, as they call it.
But I don't know if that was like the original intent, the modus operandi for him doing it.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying. A happenstance, but I don't know if that was actually a secondary thing as well. Is like we also think that they're disparaging us and essentially are not necessarily plotting against us.
Right, like one of the sheriff's deputies quit, and on his way out, he mentioned something to a reporter, kind of in passing. About
just
how much of a dick
as simple of we're asking you for a comment, and we're like no comment, to where they're basically they've given that local journalistic or local journals. Or journalist, any kind of access whatsoever. And we're like, no thanks, no comment.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's not dissimilar to our sheriff.
Block them off, or they've gotten the implication that that those representatives don't care for whatever people they have come try to interview them.
Right. Or they do, or through the rumor mill and the people they talk to that they can't verify per se, but they get a lot of rumors about how this guy's a dick and he really doesn't like you, and that's why he doesn't talk to you. And
Right.
And so, yeah, I can see it. That's a small tinfoil hat.
They've had, for the past year or so, like animosity towards a certain, gazette or journal or
a particular
Times.
journalist or two or whatever that comes in. Because I think that's weird. That's one of the weirdisms of journalism at large, to expand the topic a little bit, is like the Biden team right now. Have you heard about them? They've contracted a couple of like social media influencers to start warming the crowd for the re-election run.
I heard that.
Yeah, it's a weird little story or whatever. But it's like, like me, for example, like if out of nowhere, like I made the joke, I would sit Trump in that chair all day long and do a podcast with Trump.
If you had the access, yeah.
Because it would be
I'm
huge.
sure you would jump on that.
And so here's the question. All right, so some Trump handler calls me and be like, "Hey, former President Trump would like to be on your podcast. Would you like to do it?" Fuck yeah. Now, what am I going to talk to that guy about? I have no idea. I probably wouldn't get more than 5 words in. He's going to talk the whole time. But I don't care who you are. In the back of your head, especially in the business model part of things, like I'm taking it because I want him. A, I would like to talk to him personally, but B, it would be huge for the show. Like we would get millions of views on that episode and pick up thousands of subscribers, and it would get us from hobby fun, having a good time hanging out, to an actual pay. I mean, we'd get into pay land on YouTube and stuff like that with just that one episode. And so throughout that show, I know that. So am I going to push anything? Am I going to try to piss him off? Or am I going to try to keep him cool so maybe he'll come back? And when that becomes the norm over time, not only for a particular journalist or show, but for a network of shows, it's going to really start messing with the journalistic integrity of the entity. Because I want to play nice with the people in power, because that's how I get access. If I push too hard, they're going to stop coming on the show. And if they stop coming on the show, we don't have much show left. So what do? It's a weird spot. And it concerns me about journalism at large. Yeah. Because so many have started to kind of fold to it, where it's like, well, I'm gonna play nice to keep access. And I think that's where a lot of the partisan journalism has come from, because you have the Fox Newses who are friendly with the Republicans, and you have the MSNBCs who are friendly with the Democrats. And, like Fox News at least would take people. They would put people on the show that were not whatever, and they would argue on the show and stuff like that, where the MSNBCs don't take a lot of right-wing voices politically. Like, they don't put on a lot of whatever. So anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm not going down that rabbit hole. But over time, that just erodes the principles, I suppose, of the entity.
Yeah.
And then how much is it actual, like, real journalistic news, or is it just kind of, I'm letting Trump come on my show to tell what Trump wants to say, and I'm going to sit back and watch and cash the check.
All right.
And that's a problem.
I'm trying to remember. There was somebody, I'm not going to take the time to try to look it up. There was a Republican, I'm assuming it was a federal, either representative or senator, that came out and, talked about with the whole Fox lawsuit that's going out nowadays, and basically saying that, it's become obviously apparent that Fox is almost exclusively conservative. It was like, if we want to push our brand, and I think it was at like the CPAC meeting or something.
Right. They were, and their problem was,
and basically but he was basically saying, like, you guys need to go on to, MSNBC, CNN, et cetera. Like, go on these left-wing programs and, like, kind of lay them to shame. Not an egregious point, but of like, hey, if you want to counterpoint this, like,
right, you have to go on the shows that counterpoint it. Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, like, the one that sticks out to me is it was back
but I mean, that was part of, like, in the obvious point that Fox News had become solely just.
Well, what
defamation for all, like, as much as Fox wanted to argue, we're fair and balanced throughout the years, it's become ever
right. Because
evidently,
and one of the issues with the specific Dominion lawsuit, which they settled, which is kind of disappointing, but whatever, is in some of the conversations and emails and text messages that got released as part of the lawsuit, where they're talking about how we have to go on this angle on this story, because if we don't, all our viewers are going to go to OAN.
Exactly, it was all about viewership. Yeah,
right. Like, I mean, and again, it's an interesting.
It was not about our integrity as a news organization. It was
about our ability to pay the bills.
Right.
Like, we need to do this to pay the bills. We can't lose more watchers to OAN.
I guess we have to promote this message.
Newsmax or whatever. Is that the other one? Newsmax and OAN.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the two. They were scared of losing viewers to those networks. Which, I mean, it says something about both sides. It says something about viewers at large, where they want to watch the news that tells them what they want to hear, not the news that tells them the truth.
But I mean, I took it more as that if you've got a counterpoint to a narrative that you want to put out, go on the quote unquote opposing force,
go
and
on those other shows.
Hey,
right.
Talk to them, give them your opinion.
Well, the question is,
let them argue with you on your points if you think you have a valid point.
Right, but you could tell the people to go on those shows, but they got to let you on the show too. I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't know how many shows are inviting, a Marjorie Taylor Greene onto their show to let them argue.
I mean, it's not more often than not, but
I agree. It's both things.
Sorry, not in the Marjorie Taylor Greene thing, but.
Matt Gaetz is that's the far swinging crazy parts, but but I get what you're saying. But I think it goes on to both.
You watch
parties.
The Sunday morning CBS. I can't think of the common thing that's been going on for years. The
Meet the Press.
That's
NBC, but whatever.
That's NBC. No, I'm not what I'm talking about.
I watch Sunday morning, which they don't do politics much at all.
Oh, I thought they did.
That's the one that I'm like that's the. CBS Sunday morning, it's like the happy news. Like, they go and find. I cry in most episodes.
I'm ever scouring to try to find like some kind of like medium news source, I guess, that isn't hyperbolic.
Right. I agree with you. I think that's the thing, because I mean, but again, it's like it's. I think the example
some
that
of the
you're
majors
showing
are still going.
But I think the example that you're
showing views of both.
The example that you're talking about, though, shows that there's two problems. I, as a conservative politician, don't want to go on MSNBC because they're going to grill me and it's going to be no fun, and I'm going to have to, I might look bad, and I don't want to accidentally look bad and all that kind of stuff, so I don't want to go on their show. But then the inverse being, the MSNBC show doesn't want to invite me onto their show because they don't want to accidentally let my viewpoint get out to the public that may convince some of those people to vote for me or my party instead of the one that they're trying to push for. Now, I'm not picking anybody particular. Just when we're on topic, it's not a specific. Fox would be the inverse. Although I think Fox historically in the last couple of years has had more Democrats on than an MSNBC has had Republicans on. And maybe the Fox's play on it is like, we're going to make this guy look stupid, and so we'll bring on the biggest, dumbest ones. Well, we think of the dumbest ones, and that's our fans are going to just have our viewers are going to enjoy watching us make fun of this person to their face. Which, again, in and of itself is it's not good journalism. It's not informative. It's not good news.
Right.
And
it's just attempting to prove your point.
Right. By
subjective editing.
Right. Or by
leading questions and
right. Or by faux allowing, like you're barely letting them come on. It's a 2-minute segment, and they speak for 15 seconds of the 2-minute segment because you're yelling at them about this, that, and the other. It's like, okay, hold on, let me answer that. No, blah, 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 blah. And then by the time, all right, we got to go to commercial. We'll be right back with this other person.
Right.
Thanks for having me on.
We had a Democrat on. They're like, you didn't let him fucking talk.
Right. But I think another one too, and in a nonpartisan example, is when the Epstein thing was blowing up. When everybody was freaking out about the Epstein Island, he didn't kill himself, he did kill himself, all the crazy shit was going on with that. There was a leaked audio from, I want to say it was a CNN show, that the reporter had good intel on some stuff that was going on with this Epstein thing. This came out during the Epstein craziness, but the actual leak was from years before. And like, it's her screaming at a producer because the producer wouldn't put that block into the episode. So they go to commercial break, and she's screaming at the producer, like, "Why the fuck can't I do this story? This is a huge fucking story. We got to do the story. I can't believe that access to the royal family is more important than this fucking story. This is an insanely important story that needs to get out there, and you guys won't let me fucking do it." And it was because I think, again, my memory of the specifics is foggy. Other than it was whoever didn't want to lose access to the royal family for interviews and whatevers. Because of the, I guess it's Prince Albert connection to the Epstein stuff.
All right.
And so, so again, anyway, the whole point being is like there was a story that this person had. And the company that she worked for wouldn't let her tell the story because the company knew that if that story came out, that they lose their access to the royal family, which, the Queen's death and all the other stuff, it's good news segments. They like those news segments for whatever reason. All us Anglophiles love to see our royal family, our not royal family, comings and goings.
Right.
I do kind of want to get Harry's book. Apparently, there's some shit in there that's pretty fucked up.
Right.
Yeah. The balls of the title, just the balls of the title does it for me.
I've tried to keep up with a little of it, and it's getting crazy.
I don't understand what any of the turmoil is about, other than, like, I don't know. It sucks to be Prince Harry. I mean.
Yeah, there was something to do with, suppose there's some animosity within the royal family with him marrying a quote-unquote mixed breed or whatever.
And an American nonetheless. Or is she Canadian?
I'm not sure.
I guess if she's Canadian, she's within the Commonwealth, so that's okay.
Because something, I swear I remember one of the original things was he was marrying someone, I think she had, I don't know what TV show or movie that she was in, but there was some kind of seductive scene of her having sexual relations with someone in the movie.
She's a whore. I just think, the title of the book being Spare says it all to me. You guys don't fucking care about me. My brother lived.
From their perspective, apparently the royal family has never really accepted her or whatever. It's kind of thought down of her.
Right, but his argument is, I'm the spare. Grandma won't die. Dad takes over when Grandma dies, and Big Brother's still alive. So what am I going to do? Nothing. Big Brother's already had kids. I'm already out of this conversation. I don't exist in the bloodline part of the conversation. So what do you guys give a shit about what I do? That's the argument, though. It's why do you guys care?
Is that an argument?
They're still family, I guess. But if it's for public,
you're literally at this point 2 spots out of being literally
he's
the
5.
king.
Charles
Harry?
is king,
right? Oh, you're right. Yeah,
Big Brother
go to William's son,
and he has 2 kids. He has 2 boys.
Oh, he has 2 boys.
I believe so. So he's already got his heir and spare.
Gotcha.
Locked up. So it would take his brother and both his nephews to die before it would go to him.
Technically, yeah. Okay, yeah, I didn't really think about that. I knew he had at least 1 kid. I didn't realize he had 2 boys.
I might not be 100% on that, but I believe that's the case.
I think that's how the lineage goes. It's all essentially kind of like direct lineage.
Yeah, it's everything that. What's the other one? I can't remember his brother's name right now. It's Harry and William. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. William and his kids win. I know he's got at least 1 son.
Yeah.
And so there's very, unless you get old school, medieval style where Harry kills his brother and his nephews, then he could take over.
True.
But again, to me, his play is I'm 5 away at this point. The oldest of William's kids is 8 or 10 now.
Yeah, probably something like that.
So he's not far off from being of functional age to take over. Again, that's assuming Charles and William die in the next 10 years.
Well, that's in that kind of weird functionality of what is the...
Right, and they don't do anything technically.
The King
anyway.
of England.
Right.
I can't remember if I sent it to you. There was a really cool, that British guy that has a whole bunch of YouTube channels.
You did. We talked about it.
Yeah.
Remember we talked about how everything changes to His Majesty from Her Majesty, everything that's all the ships, all the British Navy was Her Majesty's ship. That's HMS. Now it changes to His Majesty's ship. It's still HMS.
I remember talking about that, but yeah.
But you say, like, if you're going to say, HMS Dauntless or whatever the fucking name of the boat is, if you wanted to say it the long version, you used to say her, now you say his. So the royal family cares about their pronouns. That's for sure.
Inofficiality.
Officially. How's your hockey bracket doing?
I hadn't kept up with it. I think a couple of them not doing so good.
We're only like what game? Most of the ones right now are game 3,
game 4.
Yeah, we got a little while. What else did you send me something?
I underestimated. I mean, some of that was just like gut. I didn't really try to look at it too much before I literally made it up 5 minutes after I printed that little bracket out.
I didn't know what I was doing either.
I just kind of went with gut.
I was trying to not pick one all the way down. I don't even remember who I picked to win at all.
I think I went for Rangers to win it all.
You do have the Rangers beating the Avs. I don't remember where it is in my little thingy.
I think I underestimated the Hurricanes.
I don't know where my thingy is to pull it back up.
I think one of the last times I looked, there was a number of the first round being at least starting out 1-1. So, I mean, semi-tight series. There's been a good bit of physicality going on so
some
far.
Suspensions and
yeah, there's been at least one suspension.
All right, so what's this one? You sent me this link to a YouTube video.
Did you watch it yet?
No.
Oh,
we believe that it's important that the education stay focused on the nuts and bolts. That's why we've done things
like Putting Fingers DeSantis.
Race theory.
Yeah, we're just talking over it, so we're commentating over it, which I think it makes it
to teach kids to
liable.
hate our country or to hate
I want
each
to talk
other.
over
That's
this
unacceptable.
asshat that
And of
governs
course,
the state
quickly,
of
critical race
Florida.
theory is not being taught to young children.
Talk over her as well, because I don't give a shit about her.
All right, let me get it on here so we can, because I feel like what you were trying to push at me was
can choose the phone they want, like the incredible iPhone 14.
Well, I just thought it was really cool, what the guy said.
Right, that's what I wanted to hear. I want to hear
I
what
hope that
this Navy SEAL saying about banning books.
Well, I hope that you had heard it before we did this.
No, live reaction here, people. Let's do it. Exciting.
Just want to it before you aired it.
All right.
On September 11, 2001,
go back.
I was on board USS Theodore Roosevelt.
Hear everything this guy said.
That was the beginning of it.
I got chills.
All of this moved former Navy Commander Wes Rexroad to speak up.
This is MSNBC's 11th hour.
And I want to share it with you.
Give it proper credit.
Thank you.
On September 11, 2001, I was on board USS Theodore Roosevelt when religious fanatics who wouldn't even let women be educated flew planes into the World Trade Center and my Pentagon. Spent the last decade of my naval career fighting religious fascism abroad.
He's from Florida.
Never thought I'd have to fight it
Martin
right
County,
here in the United States of America. I grew up in rural South Carolina, and books got me out of the trailer parks. My parents trusted those educators and the librarians to let me read what I needed to read. I spent 21 years in the Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program, where Admiral Hyman Rickover said a questioning attitude was the key to success in the nuclear power program. I want my son exposed to different ideas and different viewpoints so that he can learn to think critically and not be force-fed somebody else's opinion. We've all been exposed to different opinions. Makes us better, makes us stronger. Adversity has made me stronger. I didn't sacrifice 21 years of my life to stand idly by while religious fanatics and other fanatics try to impose fascism on my country.
It's a grim outlook on his naval career.
I urge you to think about what a book ban needs and use transparency. I don't need anyone else telling my son what he can and cannot read. I'm very perfectly capable of determining that for myself. Thanks for your time. Thank you for listening. I urge you to remember the Little Rock Nine. Thank you.
Okay. It's a little grim outlook on his naval career. That's kind of fun. Sorry, it's a bad joke. He didn't sacrifice 21 years.
Yeah.
Although he started off talking about how the boats got him out of the trailer park, so it wasn't a sacrifice. Anyway, I'm picking apart unimportant details of his thing.
Look, that was a pre-Outlook versus post-Outlook.
Maybe. I mean, that'd be a good question to ask this guy. I'd be curious to know if that's how he actually looks at it.
I'm assuming that's.
I think it's good. I think
that's understandable.
I think it's good in passion.
He literally
speaking.
Looked at that.
I think it's good in passion speaking, and it underlined his point.
I want to give him credit for. I mean, the video doesn't show like he's not like reading off some like fucking like script. Like it looks like he is speaking, at least from memory.
Yeah, he prepared himself. That's good. I don't think he's wrong. I don't disagree with what he's after there.
Right.
I still argue there's a definitional problem in this conversation.
I think part of it there has really been as much like talk and discussion
about. I mean, it started off.
Assuming we were like with the book ban, which what he was referencing.
Right.
Referencing.
But again, my problem in the conversation here, it's the same problem I've had when we had Matt Shears on when we were talking about it. This isn't abolishing the books from existence. It's not making it a crime to read the books. It's taking the books out of the school libraries and not using them for particular curriculum in the schools. Do I think that civil rights movement history is important? Do I think there should be books that they do in school on that topic? Yes. Do I think that's critical race theory? No. But it is the state's job. At least that's the agreed upon social contract that we have. It is the state's job to pick curriculum and pick how we teach curriculum. There's concepts we want to teach. We want to teach civil rights. We want to teach the history of the civil rights movement in the United States. We want to teach that. Now there's thousands of books we could choose to teach that subject with. And it is the operation of the state because all school boards, as I understand it, all schools are representatives of the state, not of the county or the city that they reside in. Tennessee, Florida being an example. I mean, this is Ron DeSantis, the governor of the state, talking about what books he doesn't want in his state schools. Now, it's not that those books aren't available at the bookstore or you can't order them from Amazon and have them sent to your house. It's that we're choosing not to use these books for this curriculum. You know, and we're removing them from the library for any, what's the word I'm looking for here? Any hobby reading, which I think that part's fucked up. Like, I'll agree with that. Like, I don't know that you necessarily need to take the books out of the school physically. But if you want to take them out of curriculum because you don't think they're teaching the right ideas or the ideas you're trying to teach the ways you want them to teach, that's the responsibility of the state. Whether we agree with their...
Yeah, that's a textbook thing that gets into a whole nother quandary of...
Sure. Of corruption and bullshittery.
Right.
I agree with that as well.
A lot of that goes into, I mean, I don't want to dismiss it, but a lot of it goes into the just commercial aspect of ordering a number of books. You get a better...
Sure, but
you get a better buy rate when you're buying a specific book. Buying 1 million versus 200 million books. They're going to like, oh, well, shit, if we can get this guy to print this exact same print for that much, we can save that much across literally the United States, and we can save $500,000, whatever.
Economies of scale, whatever. That's not that's. I get what you're saying on that part, especially with the textbooks and stuff like that. But like, if we're talking about, I don't know, I'm not picking on civil rights. It's just one that popped in my head, and it also crosses with CRT and all that other kind of shit. So, do we want to use this person's particular biography of Martin Luther King Jr., or do we want to use this person's?
Sorry, I went into a different topic outside.
Yeah, I would love to get better acquainted with the bullshittery that is textbooks and purchasing and contracts for textbook production, because there's some fuckery going on in there for sure. But on the particular of this banning book thing that everybody goes on about, which I don't fully disagree with it, but I think it's overblown. It's an overblown phrasing, because again, with our Navy dad here that's talking, he wants his kid. He wants his kid. He as the dad said it in his thing. I know as the parent what I want my kids to and not to read. I'm comfortable with them having access to X, Y, or Z. Okay, well, if you want them to have access to whatever and the school is not providing it, go get it for them. If the school system decided not to provide it, okay, but you want them to have an alternate, a different version of the same history, okay. Again, like the example I was trying to put together in my head, I don't know, I'm sure there are 1,000 of them, but we're going to use in this textbook a passage from Sam's biography of Martin Luther King. Or we're going to use a passage from Seth's biography of Martin Luther King. We may have different, it's still the same story per se, but we may have a little different, lens that we show it through in our biographies. And we're going to pick and choose which one we want to use.
Right. Now, are those two accessible in a...
Now, again,
public schools library?
I agree that it's problematic. I would say, I would argue that probably neither of the full biographies are accessible. It's just the excerpt that they put in the book.
Why would they?
What?
Well, I guess they would depend upon the excerpt.
If it's an excerpt in a textbook, but if again, I'm that would be in a history class, and you're taking a thing. I'm trying to throw together an example off the top of my head. I'm trying to think of an English lit class where what's one of the top banned books in the history of times, like Catcher in the Rye,
Animal Farm,
whatever. So do we want to teach about the allegory in Animal Farm? Or do we want to teach about allegory in literature as well as a little bit of history by using Animal Farm? Or do we want to use a different book that tackles both things? Or do we want to use a book that we're only focusing or do we want to use Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? Do we want to use that book to teach allegory? Because Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is the allegory of the fantasy escape from World War I or II. Is it 2? Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe?
Never read it.
I think it's 2. Anyway, the whole book is that it's this group of kids whose parents are off at war, and they get dumped on their great-grandmother's house or something like that, and they go into this fantasy land to escape from, the trials of living in war-torn England at the time. Do we want to use that book to teach allegory and how allegory works and what it means and what it doesn't mean and what the writer's trying to do by using this imagery versus that imagery? Or do we want to use Animal Farm? Well, Animal Farm ties in this communism thing. Well, we don't want to have to deal with the communism part of the aspect of it. We just want to focus on the allegory part. So we're going to use this one and not that one. Now, are we banning Animal Farm because we're using this book? Now, I agree with you that if you had Animal Farm, you might as well keep it in the library. To take it out of the library is a soft ban, in my opinion. It's not a ban. It still exists. You can still go to Barnes & Nobles, maybe, if they still exist, and get a copy of the book if you want to read it. But I think, again, to me, this comes back to we talked about this in the Matt Show. It's like, well, we're talking about banning books, but you have the Roald Dahl estate and the publisher of Roald Dahl reprinting it and changing it. Because we're trying to be like, it's a philosophical dissonance thing that I struggle with here. It's like, so at least generally politically speaking, in this conversation, it's the left who is upset about book bannings. It's always the right doing the book bannings, Ron DeSantis in Florida. And it's the left saying, you don't ban books, it's bad. Right? But then it's also the left who is encouraging R.L. Stine's books to get rewritten so that they're not offensive, or the Roald Dahl team to rewrite their books because it's not offensive. And it's like, well, those things don't match. You can't do both. You can't say both in the same breath to me. It doesn't make sense. Okay, in Roald Dahl's book, he says some terrible, like he infers some terrible shit about women or something in there. I don't remember what it was, like calling people fat, like being mean to fat people, and calling them fat to their faces somewhere in his book or something like that. That's one of the things that they edited out. Is it important to the story? Not really. Probably not. Probably doesn't make a difference to the totality of the story. But it's there. So what? But you're going to encourage and applaud the publisher for editing that out, and then turn around and yell at Republicans for changing books and curriculum because you think they're trying to ban knowledge. It's like, well, you're banning knowledge. You're already banning knowledge on one hand, and then getting mad about it on the other.
What? No.
No?
No.
Please.
In your exact example, the Roald Dahl, when people, after the fact, which I don't know exactly when Roald Dahl wrote most of his stuff, 50s, 40s, 50s, I don't know. Those people that have come about, and I know when there was the big push for it, when I think there was this whole big outcry, essentially, that this was not This was not like this some like collective. We're doing this like governmental type thing. Like this was, I want to say, an established like the Roald Dahl.
Sure. This was not right. It was not the left, as in political people who hold positions of power in the political process, forcing this action. Correct.
Right.
Where the right in the example, the right is the one that is forcing the action. Yes.
It was something crazy like collective like Roald Dahl Association of like preservation.
It was the estate, right? The estate. The estate of Roald Dahl.
His estate, yeah.
Approved the editing of his books.
Right.
Which, again, I can be the R.L. Stine one was not approved by R.L. Stine, but whatever. Of the couple examples I know off the top of my head.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of like what other example you put in what you just said. That I was trying to correspond that to.
I acknowledge what you're saying. What you were leading to is that one is a government action. The Republicans banning books is a government action, where the R.L. Stine estate approving a publisher to edit out some distasteful phrasing in this book,
right,
is a choice of the estate. Fine. But when the left is applauding an adjustment of history and encouraging it, and when in one aspect of the editing books and reprinting them, but then abhorring, is that the right word? Abhorring? Getting upset at being selective with book usage at the same time, because you're trying to erase history, you're trying to not show the bad parts of history. What's the argument usually among the banned books things? You don't want to show them the dirty parts of the U.S. history, which we've always done. It hasn't been until recently that like how terrible we were to the Native Americans is really like has any real focus to it. Like you had the Trail of Tears, like Indian history, like Native American history. I apologize, I just did it too. Native American history in our history classes, was like maybe a week,
right? And
it was pretty quick, and it's like and bye.
Yeah,
I did learn recently that apparently when the Mayflower and the Pilgrims, in that story, when they're greeted by the Native Americans, they're greeted in English.
They're greeted in English
for the first Thanksgiving or whatever. That whole story. They were greeted in English. They spoke English already.
I don't know what story you're even referring to. Like that sounds totally outrageous.
I might be making stuff up. I don't know. Anyway, back to the core conversation here.
No. I really want to hear like what story you've heard that the Pilgrims came to America and the Native Americans there spoke English.
Okay.
To them.
I'll see if I can find it. It was a meme, I'll be honest. I don't know. It could have been bullshit. I believed it.
You believed it.
Mm-hmm.
You believed that pilgrims to the... I'm sorry. I'll let you kind of look this up and see what you come...
You can make fun of me while we're doing it.
I don't want to make fun of you. I don't want to make fun of you. I find that like highly just crazy to think that accepting the thought that people from another country came to another land and the people they encountered spoke their language.
Samoset. All right. This is via wiki, so it's not necessarily true. Samoset, circa 1590 to 1653, was the first Native American to speak with the Pilgrims in Plymouth Colony on March 16, 1621. The people were very surprised when Samoset walked straight into Plymouth Colony where the people were living and greeted them in English.
That's your single evidence for an entire people that lived in North America.
No, I just said it was an interesting thing that I learned that the first Native American to speak with the colonies in Plymouth, whatever, spoke to them in English. What did you think I said? That all Native Americans spoke English?
Just does not make fucking sense to me. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'll do some more research on it, see if I can get some.
This says when, like when that's one person. 1500 to 1563.
1590. They're guessing he lived from 1590 to 1653. He was the first Native American to speak with the Pilgrims in Plymouth Colony on March 16th, 1621. The people were very surprised when he walked straight into Plymouth Colony. So it's not like there were English speakers there already.
I can't remember. Yeah, I can't remember when the Plymouth colonies were quote unquote established.
I mean, it looks like about 1600. Said he learned the language from some English fishermen. Sam Osset said he had learned some of the language from some English fishermen that had come to Maine. Somerset is also sometimes called Somerset. Yeah. Okay, that's that. Anyway, back to banning books.
That makes sense to me.
Well,
but hey,
Wiki says it. It must be true.
Exactly.
I say in a minor jest. But again, all right. So I think the phrasing of banning is mischaracterization for political purposes.
I would love to see a more Bible book banning of all these states that want to start this crazy shit of book banning.
Okay. I mean,
look through the plurality of the English Bible.
Right. Well,
and explain to me how that is not
unethical
to what essentially what they're trying to describe as elementary schools should be able to be access to. Middle schools.
I'm not trying to argue that it's ethical or equatable or logical even what's going on. But at the end of the day, like going way back, at the end of the day, we see the responsibility of educating our children to the state we live in. And the people we elect to put there are the ones that get to choose what books they use to teach our kids. If they choose a book, or if they choose not to use a book that we think they should use, we have avenues to pitch a fit about it or whatever, but that's not a banning. That's my whole catch in this thing, is that I think the word ban is overused for effect.
I mean, I think a lot of it, they're literally losing it or using it as it has stated. Because as it says, the book that they're talking about is, at that time, banned. So they're talking about book banning as...
Well, no, but it's banned from public schools. It's banned from the state of Florida schools system. It's not banned from the state of Florida.
But it hasn't been prior to that ruling of that specific book being banned.
Okay. But again, I would argue that for decades, our state school boards...
And some of those books had been for decades been legal.
The books that they used, sure.
Right.
But I would argue that for decades that they have been adding and removing books from curriculum for all sorts of reasons. Because, I don't know, the science changed because science changes over time. Our understanding of science changes over time. Let's go back to our Newton gravity example we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I'm sure if we looked, it is very much far and few between.
I don't know. That's a good question. Honestly, I would say it's... I would say the problem is how few and far between it probably is in some subjects. I would say that like in especially in like computer technology right now, I would say those books are way out of date. But when they phase out a C++ curricula and put it into whatever the new coding system that everybody uses is.
Okay, but you're talking about computer programming versus like essentially what comes down to morality.
What morality? That's what I'm saying. Like I don't what like so the
what we're talking about with the book banning, how is that not out of the realms of morality?
Oh, I'm so confused. Okay, hold on. All right, so as I understand it, let's start with
I mean, book bannings. We're essentially saying that these are concepts.
See, here's the problem. This is an abortion. This is an abortion conversation.
No.
Okay,
this is not abortion.
This is absolutely an abortion conversation.
I
will explain it to you if you let me.
This is not abortion.
This is an abortion conversation. We can't agree on terms.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
We can't agree on terms here.
All right.
Max is probably one of the most brilliant things Max has ever said is that when you get into abortion arguments, it's because you can't agree on terms. The terms are when is this a separate, wholly human being, or when is it just a mass of cells? And when you get in people that don't agree on that part, then it doesn't matter what you're talking about and whether abortion should or shouldn't be illegal. And I think what we're talking about right now is the definition of banning. Because every time you say the word, you're saying, I get the impression at least, and maybe this is my fault, I get the impression that these books don't exist. You can't read this book. You're not allowed to read this book. If your parent brings you this book, your dad's going to jail.
No.
Okay, so when you say the word banning, what you're meaning is that they are banned as part of curriculum in the school systems.
I'm sorry. I apologize for ever giving you.
Okay, but again, to try to make sure we agree in terms here, you agree that over time, a school system will change the books they use for educating on a certain topic. But what you won't agree with me with is that when they take the book out and replace it with a new one, we're not calling that book coming out of banning. Why not? We're taking it out of curriculum because that's what Florida is doing with this particular book or set of books that they're called CRT, which again, I agree is bullshit. But what they're doing is they're saying we're not using these books for this part of curriculum anymore. We're going to use these other ones. And so when we take those books out, it's banning. But when we take other books out over time, we've never referred to those as banning. And that's where I get confused and why I think we're in disagreement of terms. Because to me, it's the process of changing the materials you're using for curriculum. And by taking one out, currently it's being defined as banning in Florida. But I guarantee you California does it too. They change what books they use. Nobody's talking about California banning books.
Why not?
Because they're not books of whatever the books are that are the controversy. It's actually the books themselves that are the controversy. It's not the removal of the books.
Oh, weird. It comes down to the consensus of the populace.
Okay, well,
it's just kind of a weird thing when California comes to put it to the populace that it's not abstract. But when we find GOP-controlled states, that automatically it's defined as divisive. This is totally crazy. Like, this bullshit. Like, we can't let this shit happen. This is indoctrinating our students.
Okay, that's a valid point. I get what you're after that. A little rough. I need to work on. I mean, picking at that a little bit.
That's a very generalized point.
No,
but I mean, as you're saying, I mean, if it's been passed in California, there's been no pushback.
I mean, not that I know of. It's possible that some farmer out in rural whatever was really mad about it, but
no, I'm sorry. I want to go off on a totally different topic.
I'm just saying, like,
no,
I have a hard time.
I can bring that later if we want to expand this.
I have, I just like I don't like the phrasing. I think it's inaccurate phrasing. Maybe I should have a better word for what we're talking about that would make me a little bit less combative about it. Because I think I have a hard time. Again, maybe this is my fault, but it feels to me that when you cry book banner at somebody, you're saying they're removing the books from existence. They're making it against the rules for you to have that book in your possession.
And that's a lot of the rhetoric of it, is that they're banning it into existence.
Out of existence.
Out of existence, right. But it's more of the banning is disallowing the fact of that book being in a high school library, available to be looked at from a high school person if they're looking for subjects that they want to increase their fucking knowledge.
It's not unavailable to them.
What the fuck are the libraries in the high school there for? We have all these goddamn books, and
it's not unavailable to them. It's unavailable to them on state property.
What?
It's not unavailable to them. Those students can get access to those books. It's not unavailable to them. It's unavailable to them on property controlled by the state. On particular property controlled by the state. We don't even know if they're banning it from public libraries. That's just an assumption that we run with, and it's probably true. But it's not unavailable to them. It's just unavailable to them on a state-run library. Well, I'm sorry, at a state-run school library, as far as we know.
Right.
And again, that's the difference at play. Just because it's not in the school library, how many books are in the school library? Every book ever? Hell no. Should they have every book ever? No. But just because these ones are a topic that fucking matter for some reason, it has to be in the school library. I'm sure there's a dozen books that I've read, and I haven't read that many fucking books in my life that aren't in my kids' school libraries.
Right. As to most people, yeah.
And so again, that's where I get stuck at this thing. It's not about, if you're going to say ban, then it needs to cease to exist. That it needs to be illegal to be on shelves anywhere. If you're restricting access on state property, that's a thing, and let's talk about it in those terms, because I think that may be the best word I could think of for it. Restricted access on state property.
Would you be for that?
I don't know. That's a different conversation.
I understand that's a different conversation. But I guess that's where I look for the idea of that becoming fruition. If essentially,
I agree. There's trust that we as
those thoughts that and these books that those books then promulgate, being now then designated as books that shall not be read by anyone under the age of 17, 18. No. Should not be available I understand they're available through the public library.
Maybe. Or at the bookstore, but whatever. I get what you're going to say. But again, that implies that everything should be available. If whatever. I get it. I don't.
And that's the crazy things about laws is then you have that aspect of you allow something, or if you disallow something, you're then allowing something on the total opposite.
Oh, that's the assumption.
You have to find
by saying no
the
to
definitions
this, you're saying
of
yes to the opposite.
The particulars of you can find. We're fucking an ingenious species, and we find the finer points to argue the finer points of a particular topic.
Sure. I agree, because I think we've danced all around my particular very specific point in the topic, because I think, again, it's we elect these people, and they get to make the decisions on this. That's what we elected them to do. I think it goes down to we don't know that. A lot of us don't understand that.
Well, no. I mean, you say that in the we, and again, you have...
We do.
Right.
We do. We by voting or not voting,
but then we does not automatically designate a particular viewpoint on that we.
Sure, but it empowers. It empowers that viewpoint to do as they wish with,
outside of
with
a
it
voting
for the we.
Outside of a voting aspect of a particular subject.
But by voting or not voting, by electing these people through the process that we elect these people through, we allow them to have the authority to do the things like change curriculum and remove books.
We do the things, but we don't authorize the authority to change.
Yes, we do. We do.
Yeah.
We gave the authority. Our ancestors gave the authority to the body to do this thing, and over time it's changed.
No, not quite.
Not quite what? We elected...
We authorize the representative to promulgate our views of our district to the state.
Mm-hmm. And in the machine, when the machine works the way the machine works, the state comes up with a solution or a plan to move forward with whatever, and the people we authorize to vote on our behalf vote the way they vote, and the results of that vote must be followed by all, whether they voted for it or not.
Yeah,
that's the democratic republic process that we work within.
I agree. Yes.
So we elected these people, and they seem to think that it is in the best interest of our communities to remove these books from public schools. Not ban them from the state of Tennessee, but to remove these books from use in public schools. They think that's a better way to educate our kids than what we're doing now. It's a better way to teach the subject. It's a better way to not muddy the subject with other outside issues, because this other book does cover the subject, but we don't want to use that book anymore because it adds all this other stuff in that's not part of the curriculum we're trying to teach. And the philosophy of when and what the book contains and how it approaches the subject It's going to line up with the philosophy of the strength of the government that we have. And we have a strongly Republican government in the state of Tennessee, so the philosophy behind teaching subject A is going to be a Republican viewpoint version of it. Because we elect them. I would say there are plenty of people that are Republican-leaning in California that really don't like the way they do schools in California. And they may be loud and proud about it, but they just don't get the attention, or they do, and they're just over in California and not here, and we don't see it as much. Governor Newsom's not yet announced he's running for president, so his actions aren't under the microscope like DeSantis's are.
DeSantis hasn't.
Well, but he's pretty obviously running for it, where as long as Biden's running...
Was he announced?
Newsom's not. DeSantis? No, he's not.
Okay.
But
then he's not.
He is arguably the front runner that isn't Trump, whether he's announced or not.
Well, a lot of the announcements
but for all
to contribution.
For all the whatever...
Legally, it comes down to when he announces is when contribution starts to become...
Right, officially going one way or whatever, yeah.
Exactly.
Where, as I understand it, Newsom has said that he is not running if Biden is, and Biden has said that he is running even though he's not announced yet.
Right.
So anyway, it doesn't matter. Point is, I'm sure there are books that my kids use in school that I wish they didn't. Or I'm sure that there are books that I wish they would use in place of the books they are using that I think teach the subject better.
What books would you wish that they didn't have in your
I don't know.
elementary school's public library?
I don't know. I don't really care, personally.
Okay, so you don't care, but there are books that you would rather your students not read, but you don't care.
I'm sure if I really dug into it, I would find...
Which one is it?
I'm sure that if I really dug into it on a particular subject and I really knew it really well, I could find a book that I thought would teach the subject better than the one they're using. Yes. I don't know anything off the top of my head specifically. You know, going back to our weird Animal Farm allegory example.
But there are quote-unquote books that they're in your students' libraries, in your kids' libraries, that you would rather them not read.
No, because I don't really care what my kids read. I'm happy with my kids reading anything and everything they can get their hands on.
Okay.
But that's a personal opinion. Now, again, to be more specific on the point, like our Navy friend was talking about,
right.
If there was a particular subject that they were learning in school, that they were using a particular book that I thought was subpar, and I knew of a book that I thought was better, I would go buy that book and be like, hey, you guys are doing this? Here's another book on the topic. Check it out.
How far do you realistically think that appeal would go?
That appeal would go?
Mm-hmm.
Would appeal to who? To my kids?
To your state school board.
I don't care what my state school board does about it.
You don't care? Okay, gotcha.
I don't. What do you mean? Because I have a book that I think is better, do I think that the school board should change their curriculum to use the book that I want to use? No. But I'm happy to let my kids get multiple options on a topic. Sure. Would it be a bonus if I didn't have to go buy the book and it was in the library and I could get it for free? Sure. Do I think the school's obligated to cover every possible book that's on a topic? No.
All right.
You know, if there was a particular, like if there's a particular business book, that's not a good one. I don't read a lot of business books. You know, I don't know. Like, I don't know.
Nor that should apply to educational
you know, like, I mean, like, realistically, like, any of the American history books that we studied in high school.
Right.
Or in middle school, high school, whatever, I think are subpar and very American forward.
Generalized.
Inaccurately.
Yeah.
They're inaccurately America forward. I would argue, in my understanding of it, that Russia had more to do with the end of World War II than the U.S. did. Not to say that we didn't play a part, because we obviously did. But I think Germany's dumbass intent on trying to invade Russia in the winter was probably a more determinant factor on why and how the Allies defeated the Nazis than the U.S. being added to the war.
Yeah, it was absolutely a factor.
But that's not really how it's taught. It's taught that those doughboys came in.
I don't know.
America saved the world by entering World War II.
I agree. There has been a reluctance to.
And I would say that false
acknowledge that there was a.
And I would say that false
Eastern
narrative
Front, that there was essentially what has been, you know, well, outside of the World War I version of the Western Front, but there was the World War II version of the Western Front.
Right. But I would say
the English, French.
I would assume that to this day, because we're a nation of proud peoples and we have proud politicians who think that we're the best nation on the planet, which I know you disagree with, but we probably still teach it very much of we were really the main player that made this thing go. The Russians were there, and they were wrong. We were on a team with Russia for the time being, but barely. And they didn't really do much. They just stood in the snow and kept the Germans from advancing. Where we invaded Berlin and all that kind of stuff, and we're the big player, and we're the reason this thing is. And the communists are bad, by the way, just in case we forgot that part of it. But we put up with that part because they helped us make sure that we could beat the Nazis.
Yeah,
and then turn around and beat the Japanese by bombing them out of existence. Partially. And I would agree that that's still how it's taught today. And that's how we were taught then. And it's just not accurate historically. But it is a America-centric version of the story. And that's how it's taught. So sure.
But is that good or bad?
I mean, well, it depends what the goal of teaching of schools are. Because I still go on my stupid Austrian model thing or German, whatever it is that I always talk about, how we teach them to work in factories and we teach them to care about their country.
All right.
And so, yeah. We're the best. We're the best of the best. We saved the world from the fucking Nazis.
But I mean, outside of the factory, do you think it's great to just straight up teach that America is the number one country in the U.S.?
No, I don't. I think it's a big problem. I think it's becoming more evident over time that it was a mistake to be so completely propagandist about our world involvement. I would say you're probably still teaching Vietnam as a win in high schools.
Yeah, I would hope not. I don't know what evidence is there.
There isn't, but I'm just saying, or at least that Vietnam was a noble effort. I mean, I would say that I would be looked at a little sideways if I would to go on a rant about how Iraq 1, 2, and Afghanistan were colossal waste of times and a corrupt money scheme for all sorts of other shit. Because we went in there with noble causes. It was important. Weapons of mass destructions. We're getting Saddam, and we're getting fucking what's his face. Right. And we're gonna save the world. We're gonna protect the world from these evil terrorists and their ideology and madness and whatever. Which is not true. Never was. Not really. Not to the intent and expense that we spent on trying to do anything, and we sure as hell haven't gotten any real progress out of it. But we built a nation of American terrorists that are now invading capitals and doing all sorts of crazy shit here on our grounds because we don't trust you anymore when you tell us we're doing something for a good reason.
I saw actually an interview recently that was pushing back upon the rhetoric of the initial, so this would have been early 90s.
Daddy Bush.
Yeah, Daddy Bush. The original deposition of Saddam at that time. That there were many other fundamentalist viewpoints that were being promulgated into those same regions.
Right.
And it was just kind of like the juxtaposition of, we were essentially indoctrinating our viewpoint upon that region versus...
Right.
And then, 10, 15 years later, we try to say, hey, we're trying to reestablish or democratize these regions.
Right.
Bring democracy to these regions.
Right.
That had no concept of it whatsoever.
Right.
And then part of it was trying to push back on the idea of, at that time, that we had promulgated our aggression, that was the only thing that was making the disturbance and craziness that was going on in the Middle East, that we were adding to that.
Right. We created a mess, and then...
Right. When in fact there was also a push at that time of many other factions,
right,
Islamic and other states.
Right. We jumped into a mess that existed and made a bigger mess, and then had to... And that was our excuse to really go in and clean up.
Right.
Yeah. I would agree with that sentiment. You got a News of the Weird for us?
A little bit.
Let's do it.
Hold up.
Can't not say get the voice on.
Yeah, sorry. What was the last thing I wrote?
Gotta do it. Gotta do it.
Now I can't find these actual quotes of, but there was a couple weeks ago. I thought it was crazy. There was I guess it was a lawsuit that had been going through the court systems of, I believe it was a neighbor that had flipped off another neighbor in Canada, and it went all the way up to, I'm assuming, the Canadian Supreme Court. They made it allowable
to flip off your neighbor.
Good.
I wouldn't think that would be
It is within your Canadian rights to flip off a neighbor.
Good. I think that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I mean, there's case law in the States where you can, like, for flipping off cops. There's been stories of cops, like people flipping off cops and then cops coming and pulling them over and writing them tickets for disorderly or some shit like that, or arresting them. And there's U.S. Supreme Court law that says you can flip off a cop.
I would agree with that.
Or U.S. Supreme Court precedents, I guess is the word.
I'm sad that it made it all the way up. Like, I don't know what they would have to argue against.
I mean, you could try to pound the, like, public indecency, maybe. I mean, they are Canadians. It's weird. I didn't know Canadians knew how to flip people off. Or I figured maybe they did the English style with the two fingers.
No, I mean they're pretty much in the same continent. That I think they adopted the middle finger.
The proper Western Hemisphere. Monroe Doctrine did something good in the world.
I've been curious. I don't think I've ever seen like a Canadian like the quote unquote like two finger, or what people in the British version, notify as the victory symbol, because it's one way which way your hand is turned, facing the person.
Right.
Whether you're telling them fuck you or V for victory.
That's funny.
Yeah.
All right, people. That's the show. Road tripping, driving all the way to West Virginia to go clean out my grandma's house. So that's what I'm doing for the weekend. I hope you guys have a great weekend. We appreciate you listening. We're Almost Agreement, almostagreement@gmail.com. Find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and YouTube. Go to the website, almostagreement.com. While you're there, look forward to the Voter Guide 23. It will be coming soon. We still skipped over the election, the new election law. We also skipped the hemp law, which I think officially passed too. So, I'm trying. Like I said, I've been talking to Team Elaine Davis to try to get her to come in and do a session review show, specifically on that election law one, because she was the forebringer of that for the House. We'll talk more soon. We got plenty of stuff going on, and maybe my schedule will open up so I can start having some more interviews more often. So anyway, almostagreement@gmail.com. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, favorite podcast provider. Like, share, friend, follow, tell your friends about us. We're going to keep doing what we're doing. almostagreement.com or almostagreement@gmail.com. Send me an email. Tell me how I need an electrician if anybody's an electrician out there. Thanks, everybody. Like a half-second pause.